ahead and call the meeting to order. All right, good evening, everyone. At this time, I'd like to call to order the Town of Superior Board of Trustees meeting for Monday, April 13th, 2020. Could you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
United States of America,
and to the republic
for
which
which it
stands one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, liberty and justice
justice
for all. Okay, thank you. That was a little clunky, but first time for everything. Thank you all. Could we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Mayor Clint Folsom,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mark Lasis,
Here.
Trustee Sandy Hammerly,
here,
Ken Lish,
Here.
Kevin Ryan,
Here.
Neil Shaw,
Here.
Laura Skwazinski,
Here.
Town Manager Matt Magley,
Here.
Attorney Kendra Carberry,
Here.
Town Clerk Phyllis Harden here.
All right, thank you, Phyllis. Next on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to our agenda this evening that board members would like to make to the agenda? Any items off the consent you'd like to pull or other changes?
I'd like to pull item 3D, the RC event contract.
Okay. Any other changes?
Yes.
I'd like to pull 3G.
3G, Mark. Okay.
And I'm pulling 3E for a quick comment.
Okay. Any other changes?
My only request was, just given the, I made this request a couple weeks ago via email, but I was just hoping we could get the consent agenda items placed on the agenda after items 4 and 5, which are the oil and gas ordinance and then the Goodland contract.
Okay, specifically the items that we've pulled.
Right.
Okay, I'm fine with that. If other board members have any objections to that? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda with 3D, 3G, and 3E pulled, and we'll cover those items after item 5.
So moved.
Before items. Okay, motion by Trustee Skwazinski.
I'll second.
There's a second. Second by Trustee Lish. All those in favor? So we'll do a roll call vote. I think we have to do a roll call vote on everything. So.
Okay. Lish,
Yes.
Lasis,
Yes.
Hammerly,
yes,
Folsom,
Yes.
Skwazinski,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
All right, thank you. That is the approval of our agenda. We're now on to public comment, and this is public comment on consent agenda, presentations, and non-agenda items. And to participate in public comment, we'd ask the public, if you'd like to make a public comment at this time, to please signal by using the hand raise feature, which is on your Zoom screen. And I see one is there. If you're on the phone, which looks like everyone's on the computer, but if anyone happened to be on the phone, you would press *9 to access the hand raise feature. So we've got 2 individuals that have raised their hands. I will call by name. Now 3, I'll call by name. If you would please introduce yourself, your name, your place of residence, and limit your comments to 5 minutes. If you have questions, just state those in the comments and we will address those at the end of public comment. We can't do a dialogue during public comment, so just a note there. All right, we'll go with our first public comment from Kelly McCauley. Kelly, go ahead. You're on.
Sorry, I just unmuted myself. Can you hear me now?
Hear you just fine. Go ahead.
Okay, Kelly McCauley, 1950 Shamrock Drive in Superior. Just concerned about what's going on the Zaharis property, where you're dumping all the stuff for the 88th Street construction on there, and just worried about the wildlife that that someone threw all the dirt over all the prairie dogs and stuff. Are you guys aware of that?
Okay.
And then also I want to find out is if the zoning has changed for that property. And trying to think what else. Well, thank you all for doing this. I appreciate it. And hopefully 88th Street will get done good, but I'm really worried about the wildlife on the Zaharis. And also they put straw running along the reservoir, but they didn't run it along the south side where the land pitches down and all the debris can go into the water, water runway, the conduct, I guess, that goes into the reservoir. That's going to bring mud and debris into that. So they only did it on the east side, you know, by the reservoir. If you could have someone come out and check the south side where the land pitches down, because I'm worried about materials and junk going into it there. And also you guys know how I feel about the building on the Zaharis. And are you guys going to let us know when you're going to be voting on the rezoning and when the townhouses that want to be built there, when that's going to be coming up in what meetings? I haven't been able to find that. And that's about it. Hope everyone's staying healthy and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you for the comments. I'll address a couple of those items. The zoning has not been changed. We do not have a date at this point for the agenda item going to the Planning Commission, which would be the next step, and then following to the board. Due to the coronavirus situation, we've canceled the Planning Commission meeting for the month of April, and we're evaluating that going forward. So don't have an exact date for that, but that that's the status right now. And regarding the dumping of the dirt and the straw, if the town manager has anything to add on that, or maybe it might need some further research by town staff, but we'll certainly look into that and take appropriate steps as needed to get that
Okay,
addressed.
great, thank you.
Okay. All right. Teresa Clark, you're next. Teresa, looks like you're still muted. Go ahead. Okay, there you go. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm timing this as well so that I don't waste your time. And we go. So I have some observation about our town management and our leadership. When the residents around the Land Rover building complained that they needed for that to not be a used car dealership, because somebody granted them a license, then the town paid $3.8 million for that piece of property. Likewise, we have the Town 15, which right now, according to my, right now, this was different a year or two ago, but right now it's worth about $3 million and it remains unused. All because there's an apoplectic seizure amongst you and the residents of the Town 15 at the mere thought of a pickleball court going on to that piece of property. Likewise, there was a proposed park on Riverbend, and because the residents of Riverbend complained about that, there was no park put on Riverbend. And yet, somehow, some way, there was a park put on the residential buffer that's protected by an ordinance, a town ordinance, and that was done without due process. There was no process of that. It did not go through the committees, none of the committees. There was no public process. There was somebody sitting at a meeting who frankly pitched a fit And suddenly there was a park on the residential buffer that's supposed to be protected by a town ordinance. So my questions toward y'all, and actually I know they really can't be answered at this point in time, but the residents along the streets of Brandon, Wiley, Wiggins, Carville, Pitkin, and further west all seek representation from you in terms of protecting our quality of life. But when we complain to you about things like the construction that goes on 24/7 with the, I'm sorry, here it comes, beep, 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 that lasts between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m., you do nothing. When we ask you to protect us in terms of the air pollution coming from the equipment and the dirt, the equipment, diesel emissions and the dirt, you do nothing. So I'm sure I haven't quite fully made my point because I run out of time every time. But we're waiting for you to represent us in the same fashion that you have represented the citizens that live along the Town 15. In the same fashion that you have represented the citizens who didn't want a used car dealership next to their lot. In the same fashion that you represented the residents by Riverbend who didn't want to park in their yard. Well, right across their yard, sorry. So our questions here are, what are you going to do for us? And that's a very challenging question for you to answer because due to the governor's stay-at-home order, we cannot seek legal counsel to define the language for our ballot initiative, citizens initiative, nor can we seek petition signatures for the ballot initiative to tell you that what you guys are doing is wrong. And it's unfair to all of the residents along the 5 streets that I mentioned and many more. So those are my comments. Thank you for listening. I appreciate that you're having this meeting online. And I certainly hope that you're all staying safe and healthy. My best to you.
Thank you, and our best to you and your family, and appreciate your comments, and we will continue working on all those issues. So thank you. Okay, we've got 2 other people that have raised hands. We've got Chris Nunez next, and then Chris Cole on deck. So Chris Nunez, go ahead.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Chris.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. I am a resident of Rock Creek. I'm also on the board of directors for the HOA. I am here to just introduce myself to you guys, some of whom some of you I've met, some of you I have not, but I'm just making an introductory comment that our HOA is very interested in working a little bit more collaboratively with you guys on things like the fencing contract and other issues like announcements to our residents about city issues, etc. So this is really just an introductory comment. I have nothing substantively to comment about on behalf of the HOA. I'm just here essentially as a representative of the HOA, and that's the extent of my comment. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Chris. Appreciate you being on the meeting and your comments. So thank you. All right, next we'll go to Chris Cole. And if anyone else would like to, Chris Cole, go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. Had some concerns. I just sent a letter to Matt Magley this week on some stuff going around. I live over on Amherst Street, and so I have some concerns about Promenade Street going through Promenade Drive and the Saharas property and what is going to be done on the 88th Street construction. I saw the first change order come through to perhaps go from a light at Promenade and 88th to a roundabout. Seeing the initial estimates at about $1 million to go for a roundabout versus $500,000 for a light. concerns about the roundabout that I have, although I'd prefer those in any traffic situation just due to the fact that they're safer. One question I have is, does that estimate for a roundabout include any real property acquisition? Because being right by that piece of property, as I look at it, to do a roundabout, you're going to have to extend out and probably have to acquire property on Zaharis and maybe even some of the homes that are there. I also have concerns that coming on 88th Street, going south on 88th Street to take a right on Promenade is basically a U-turn right now. So if you are looking at a roundabout, I'm not sure how adequately traffic can pass through onto Promenade to be able to make a turn right there. So I think a light might be better, although I'd prefer a roundabout just for safety reasons. I have concerns over just the growing costs of these change orders that typically come about in government construction. So, you know, what starts off as a $2 million bid to do 88th Street has already increased by at least 500,000 for this. And I suspect more if you do go ahead with the plans for a roundabout. So I just wanted to express my concerns on that and have you look at that. And I'm also wondering what the costs are going to be for Promenade to be completed and what value that adds to Superior because it serves so few residents because of how we're blocked off on where I live. There's no cut through on Waldona anymore. And so Promenade serves no basic function for this area of the neighborhood to get to downtown Superior. It would only serve perhaps the construction going on the Zaharis property. And last on that one, I would just probably vote not to do the condos there in the sense that I think if you look at the tax base for Superior, we're lacking in a lot of industrial type businesses, people coming in here and able to do work that would maybe even support local businesses. So I'm not sure about rezoning the property. And that's all I wanted to state on. I'll pay attention to your addresses later.
Okay, thank you, Chris, for the comments. And we are going to be having an agenda item later in the meeting, agenda item 5, which is a full discussion on the 88th Street construction. And so we'll be talking about pretty much all of the questions that you asked. So I encourage you to just stick around for that segment of the meeting, and we will have an opportunity for public comment during that agenda item as well, just so people know. And we will have a public comment section for item 4 as well, which is the oil and gas item. So that looks like it concludes it for this segment of general public comment, unless there's any last minute hand raises, which I do not see. So we will go on now to our next segment, which is presentations. There are none and no advisory committee reports tonight. So we are on now to the consent agenda, which we've pulled 3D, G, and E. So I will entertain a motion to approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion by trustee Lasis,
Second.
second by trustee Hammerly, and we'll do a roll call vote on the consent agenda.
I'm sorry, Folsom,
Yes.
Emmerly,
Yes.
Lasis,
Yes.
Risch,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Kwasinski.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Consent agenda passes unanimously. All right, we're on to item number 4, which is adoption of an ordinance amending Chapter 16 of the Superior Municipal Code concerning regulations related to oil and gas development and a resolution adopting the Oil and Gas Best Management Practices document. And would Town Manager Magley like to start us off on this item?
So this is a third meeting. I think the board's had on our regulations that are being proposed up there, oil and gas regulations, development related to that. Matt Sir has incorporated a new in Lace's suggestions at the last meeting where we had suggestions to increase the buffer from residential as well as from waterways, and then some additional cleanup items that I think everybody sees as part of their red line. And then trustee Lish, who sent out suggested additional red line, one section that I think everybody sees. I think we have Matt on with us and asking if we've got additional items that you'd like to point out to the board. Matt?
Okay, just real quick, Matt Magley, your audio is really hard to hear, so maybe
Oh, is it?
it was a little hard to hear. It was kind of garbled, so maybe look at a different. We'll work around there on your audio, but we'll go ahead to Matt Sura next.
All right.
Great. How is my audio? All right.
Very good.
Yeah, as was mentioned, we're going to continue the discussion that we left off on March 9th when it got too late to continue about both the ordinance to amend the Superior Municipal Code as well as a resolution to adopt the BMP document. Before we get into that, I just wanted to let you know that since we last spoke, the Commonwealth Gas Conservation Commission has announced that they're going forward with rulemaking to incorporate the rules for what they call the mission change rulemaking to incorporate Senate Bill 181. And the request for party status is due, just announced today, next Friday, the April 24th. And the initial pre-hearing conference is the following Tuesday, April 28th. So I just wanted to put that out there. To get into the ordinance, there were two changes or two areas that were proposed to change. One was the financial security in 1637-50, and then there was also location restrictions that are found in 1637-130. I have provided red lines based on some of the recommendations that were made towards the end of the meeting on the 9th, and they should be before you in the draft ordinance.
So I looked at the red lines, Matt, and thank you for doing that. I'll just state for the record that I believe that Matt's red lines accurately reflect the proposed motion that was made at the end of the last meeting. And just for everybody's, to refresh everybody's recollection, there was essentially 3 points that were made. Section 1637-50B4, that was the financial security requirement. The motion that was made at that point was to require the minimum financial security requirement of $82,500 per well bore. In my understanding with discussions with Matt Sura, there's no distinction between a well bore and a well. The purpose of the motion was just to make sure that it's not for a well site or an entire well pad, because there may be multiple wells at a single well pad. So the motion and the red line as drafted, I think accurately reflects that it's $82,500 per well, not per well pad. I understand that Trustee Lish circulated some revisions to that section, and I looked at it briefly, and I don't want to speak for him, so I'll let him talk about that, but at least my initial review of his proposal looks like that's a friendly amendment to my motion on that aspect. Then on the other two sections, section 1637-130B, that's the residential setback. I'm still advocating for a 1,500-foot residential setback. Section 1637-130C would be the 1,000-foot setback for trails, for streams, for waterways. The only change that I would encourage the board to consider tonight, in addition to what was made at the last meeting, is to be consistent with at least the COGCC proposed rulemaking, Rule 604. That proposed rulemaking has a setback for schools at 2,000 feet. And I think that if the COGCC is going to go that way, I think we should be certainly not below what the COGCC is advocating for. So what that would do then would be, I believe, an amendment to section 1637-130B, and it would be 1,500 feet for residential, but then 2,000 feet for schools. But other than that, my motion's the same as, and I haven't made it yet, but the discussion that I'd like to have about the proposal and the motion that was made at the end of the last meeting is the same as what we were discussing then.
So I can speak to the language I circulated earlier this evening related to section 16-37-50 B4. As Mayor Pro Tem Lasis noted, this can be considered a friendly amendment. As I read the language, I believed it could be strengthened with some specificity. So the proposal that I am making is that section 16-37-50 B4 will now state that the financial security will be determined based off the specific circumstances of the application, but will consist of a minimum of $82,500 per well. The minimum financial security amount per well shall be adjusted each year by the increase or decrease in the Consumer Price Index issued by the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics for the Denver-Boulder metropolitan area. So essentially, all this amendment does is just add a bit more specificity and remove some gray area about that this is a minimum and is not expected to be a standard, and that each application will be reviewed on its merits.
And that sounds like a friendly amendment to me. So I think that's a good suggestion and improvement to the language. So thank you, Ken.
All right, thanks, Ken and Mark. Are there other board members that had comments or questions about this item?
Kevin, you're muted.
Kevin, I see you talking, but you're muted.
Good, you didn't hear the profanity when I was trying to unmute.
Oh, good.
Ken, thanks. It makes sense to me. I actually didn't see that. I was hearing you talk and then I flipped and I saw that email. Can you pull up that email, and is there a way for Ken to share his screen just so it was sort of difficult to follow. I mean, I think I've got it followed, but I'd love you to sort of say it with the visual aid at the same time, since it was not in the packet. Now you're muted.
Apologies. I just tried and I got an error message saying the host has disabled participant screen sharing, so I can't share the language.
Lesson learned. Okay.
Ken, if you try it again, it should work. This is Martin.
Okay. Yep, there it is. All right. Can you all see my email?
Yes.
Yep. So let's just do a redo on that one, Ken. Just so talk to us about what you're doing. Thank you for that.
Indeed. All right. So I have highlighted the amendment that I am proposing, and the red text is the changes that I am asking for, and I have strikeouts where appropriate. So again, I will read, the financial security will be determined based on the specific circumstances of the application, but will consist of a minimum of $82,500 per well. The minimum financial security amount per well shall be adjusted each year by the increase or decrease in the Consumer Price Index issued by the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics for the Denver-Boulder metropolitan area.
Okay, thanks, Ken.
Yep.
Thanks.
So just for clarification, Ken, the intent of that language would say in no circumstances, notwithstanding that each well site is different, but in no circumstances would a well have a financial security amount less than $82,500.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions? Laura, go ahead.
Ken, I have one question regarding the language as you have it written around the increase in price. Is that applicable only for the time at which the application is made? Or is that meaning they make the application this year, they run the well, let's say for 2 years, would they have to increase the minimum financial amount every year, or we're just increasing that one time at the time we make the application?
I would defer to our attorneys and staff to answer that question.
This is something that financial security is something that is put forward as part of the application. So it isn't something that you would revisit. It's an application that is either going to be approved or rejected. And as part of that application, you're going to have a security amount that is defined here in that section.
Okay, so the proposal would be that it only, once they make the application, the amount sticks. It doesn't change if they make an application and then drill for, let's say, 2 years.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure I understood that.
And the purpose of the financial security requirement is really to ensure that there is sufficient reserves there in the event of a cleanup that the town would need to take care of, right? So like if an operator went under, there was enough there to then not force the town to go out of pocket for any cleanup, right? It would be, you've got a 32 well site on a specific pad, and then all of a sudden the operator goes under. Well, we at least have whatever 32 times 82,500, whatever that is, $2 million to deal with remediation efforts.
Plus whatever bonding that they have to do at the state level. That's correct.
Okay. Not seeing anyone else, or doesn't look like anyone else has anything to add to that. Are we perhaps ready for a motion on this?
Well, I'll make a motion if nobody else wants to talk any further.
Before we do that, I do have additional discussion on the other red lines that were proposed.
Okay.
So another question, and this is for Matt Sura. Again, can you answer whether there are other governments that have adopted anything above a 1,000 foot setback for the facilities that are listed in sections 16-37-130 B and C?
And I am kind of keeping my ear to the ground on this. I can't say that I know what every local government in the state of Colorado has done, but to my knowledge, there have been no ordinances that have adopted setbacks greater than 1,000 feet. Adams County has a 1,000 foot setback. City and County of Broomfield on first reading adopted a 2,000 foot setback. They have not yet gone to the second reading, so that's not adopted. I know the town of Erie is also looking at something that is going to be greater than 1,000 feet. Both Erie and the City and County of Broomfield are looking at allowing for some waiver process or some variance process to get around the greater setback, if it meets those criteria laid out in that variance process.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And on the question of setbacks for rivers and surface water of bodies that are not being used for public drinking water? Are you aware of any other governments that have setbacks of 1,000 feet?
I am not. I know that the closest you get is 500-foot setbacks. In the Bureau of Land Management and the White River District does allow for a 500-foot setback from water bodies. But I'm not aware that certainly Colorado Gas Conservation Commission doesn't have that requirement, nor does any local government.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just got my video working again. Sorry about falling off for a little bit there. So since it seems that we are getting ready to move into the motion, well, Mayor, are we going to take public comment before we move into motions?
Yes, we will do that.
Okay.
Are there any further board questions? I had one, but are there any further board questions? Sandy, did you have one?
No.
Okay. And Matt, Sarah, what is your anticipated timing on Broomfield going forward with their setback, 2,000-foot setback? I know you said they've been to first reading. What's their anticipated schedule, or if you know?
My understanding is that May 12th, I believe, is when they're looking at bringing that back to the city council. You know, although that's subject to change based on the fact that we're all staying at home, and the reason that it hasn't been passed already, frankly, is because they had delayed that decision.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there anyone in the public that would like to have public comment on this item? I'm looking at the attendees. I'm not seeing any hands raised. If anyone in the public would like to comment on this agenda item, please indicate by doing the raise hand feature at this time, if you would, or star 9 on your phone, but it looks like everyone's on the computer. Okay, not seeing any public comment. So on to motion and then discussion.
Actually, before we jump into the motion, I do have a question. Just conceptually, this is for Matt and the board. If we went with a different number in section 16-37-130, instead of 1,500, and for now put in 1,000, there's nothing to say that we just can't revisit this once Broomfield and Erie have moved forward. Correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. We could always revisit these.
Right. I wanted to think about that. Again, we don't have an application sitting on our desk that we have to deal with. We don't have active operations anywhere near us. I think Erie and Broomfield have larger issues that they're trying to weigh and deal with right now. And my personal bias is maybe not be the tip of the spear here. Let Erie and Broomfield lead the way, and then follow once they've established that. I mean, obviously our moratorium expires today, and we do have to move forward. I'm just a little hesitant to be the ones leading out in the front on this right now. But don't get me wrong. I mean, the reason I went to the Capitol a year ago was specifically to allow us as a town to set our guidelines and our ordinances the way that we feel that best suits our residents. So I'm not opposed to what's in the draft language. I'm just a little bit hesitant to be the ones pushing for it, when Erie and Broomfield definitely are trying to do that for their communities as well.
So I'll follow up on that, and I appreciate Trustee Shaw's comments, and I think they reflect my own comments as well. I don't see any reason for us to be the proverbial canary in the coal mine in pushing the envelope. Our regulations as written, so excluding the alternative language for section 16-37-130, does cover all of Superior. I think that is sufficient, and I absolutely would encourage us to circle back to these regulations once Broomfield and Erie have led the way, and that there's more clarity on the gray areas that exist within the state laws. That way we're not putting ourselves into any undue litigation risk.
So I think it's also important to note that the COGCC model rules right now, that the Rule 604 as proposed has, the 2,000 foot setback for schools. There is a 1,500 foot setback for residences of like whatever, it's like 10 units or 15 units. But there is the concept of a 1,500 foot residential setback within the COGCC model rulemaking that they're promulgating right now. Obviously, that's subject to change and subject to, getting adopted, and we don't know necessarily what's going to happen. I still think that it's really an important point for Superior to lead on this issue, and I think that if we're going to be potentially confronted as a neighboring jurisdiction for an oil and gas application that could be proposed in Jefferson County or in Broomfield County, across Highway 128, there is a very real threat that there could be a well site that is located less than 1,500 feet from residences in Superior, that our residences would want us as a town board to do something about it, right? And we could petition to the state as an interested municipality. And I think it is more persuasive for us to say, look, we are not trying to impose a 1,500 foot setback outside of our borders when we have 1,000 foot setback. If we are being consistent, intellectually consistent, and we say, look, we want a 1,500 foot setback imposed outside of our borders because that is precisely what we have within our borders. I think it's a more persuasive argument. We're not being, hypocrites with, trying to, get something imposed outside of our boundaries that is, more stringent than is what is imposed within our boundaries. So I'm not worried of that a 1,500 foot residential setback is excessive, considering that it's already consistent with COGCC. It's less than what other jurisdictions are going for, like Broomfield. I mean, Broomfield's going for 2,000. If they're going to pick a fight, I think Broomfield's probably the likely target. And I think this is necessary and reasonable under the circumstances to protect the public health of the people that are living on Snowmass Circle in South Superior.
Thanks, Mark. And I'm comfortable moving ahead with that direction as well. A month ago, I was not so comfortable, but after learning what Broomfield was planning and just the way the world has changed in the last month, I think that we are in decent shape to move forward and not be a target for litigation. And I would just prefer to do it the way we want to do it and then be done with it. So
I appreciate that. I don't disagree. I mean, I wanted to have the dialogue. I'm on board with the 1,500. I think in a perfect world, our moratorium would have 3 more months on it, and then we could, sort of wait. But I think, we are where we are, and I am in support of the 1,500, in terms of the residential setback, and 1,000 with respect to public spaces. I think it's a good direction.
How does everybody feel about the 2,000 for schools?
I'm in support of it.
Have we, and I guess I don't have a map at hand. I mean, if we drew circles around our 2 schools, are we even outside of the town of Superior? Like, I think we're still in residential areas.
Yeah. But it's also to contemplate, schools and future schools, I guess, is the way that the ordinance is written right now. And I think that it makes sense for us to be consistent with COGCC to the extent that they're going to a certain threshold.
So to be clear, though, the COGCC has not yet passed these rules and has not established these thresholds. These thresholds could change. It's being what's contemplated, but this is not final. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Yes.
Right. So in essence, while it's entirely possible the COGCC could uphold these thresholds and we could be in line with the COGCC in the end, it's also entirely possible that they might get a lot of feedback from Weld County or oil and gas companies that would push for smaller setbacks, and that ultimately gets worked into the rules. And now we are out on a ledge further beyond what the COGCC has established, or any other local government at this time, therefore making us a target.
In theory, possibly, but in practice, considering that we only have 2 schools in Superior, they would be hard pressed to find a place to drill there because they'd be running into the residential setback because they're surrounded by residences anyway.
And just to clarify, I asked this question, I think I'm following up on Neil. If the COGC passes this, we can always change our rules. That is correct. I see Kendra's head shaking. And for me, I'm not sure I want to go that far out on the limb at this point. I'm comfortable with what we've got in the language, amended language right now, but I'm just not quite sure I want to go out that far on the limb yet.
And that's fair. I mean, I raised it because it was new information that we've learned subsequent to our last meeting. So I thought it was worth having the discussion about it because it's not contained within the original motion that we contemplated at and considered at the last meeting.
Okay, very good. So I think we're at the point to go ahead with a motion.
So I'll make a motion to approve Town of Superior Ordinance number O-4, Series 2020, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior amending Section 16-6-120 and Article 16-34 of the Superior Municipal Code and adding a new Article 16-37 to the Superior Municipal Code entitled Oil and Gas Development, with the alternatives that are redlined in the draft ordinance, specifically to Section 1637-130B, imposing a 1,500-foot setback, and then in Section 16-37-130C, imposing a 1,000-foot setback for trails and waterways. And then in 1637-50B4, I would defer to Trustee Lish's red line changes that he's previously read into the record tonight.
Thank you. We have a motion by Trustee Lasis,
Second?
second by Trustee Hammerly. And any further discussion on this motion before we vote? Kevin?
No.
No? Okay. All right. Phyllis, if you could go ahead with the roll call vote, please.
Sure. Lasis,
Yes.
Lish,
No.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Skwazinski,
Yes.
Folsom,
Yes.
Hammerly.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Motion passes. Could you read the votes back just to clarify?
Sure.
Like I heard some audio that was not quite clear there. I just want to make sure we got everybody captured correctly.
So the A's that I have are Folsom, Hammerly, Lasis, Ryan, Shaw, Skwazinski, and nays is Lish.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Motion passes, and thanks to Matt Sura and staff for all your hard work on this. This is a nice conclusion to a very long chapter in our town's history, and so very happy to be able to get some strong regulations in place. And so appreciate all the residents as well. I know we've got a lot of residents that are very active and interested in this topic, and so appreciate all all of the support and advice that we've received over the last over a year on this issue. So thank you to all. All right, with that, we'll move on to item number 5, which is adoption of a resolution approving change order number 1 for phase 2 to Goodland Construction's contract for the 88th Street improvements.
Mayor?
And Town Manager Magley.
Uh,
Yes.
Did we have a resolution we needed to approve as part, we need a resolution as part of the oil and gas, is that right, Matt?
That is right. The BMP resolution also needs to be approved.
Yes, thank you for that reminder. Let's go back to that. Trustee Lasis, do you want to?
Yep, I'll make a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem Lasis.
Mayor, motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution number
28.
R-28, Series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Trustees for the Town of Superior adopting the oil and gas best management practices in conjunction with the town's adoption of new oil and gas regulations as set forth in Article 37 of Chapter 16 of the Superior Municipal Code.
Thank you. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis.
Second.
Second by Trustee Hammerly. And Phyllis, roll call vote, please.
Folsom,
Yes.
Hammerly,
Yes.
Lasis,
Yes.
Lish,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Kwasitsky,
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Phyllis. This motion passes unanimously. All right. That concludes item number 4. Thank you. And we're on to item number 5, which I previously read. Town Manager Magley, you want to go ahead with that item?
Thank you.
One question, Clint, Mayor, were we going
Yes.
to do this next or the consent agenda next?
We're going to do 5 next and then followed with the consent agenda items.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks.
Thanks. I think I got my audio fixed.
Yes. Sounds good.
The town is planning on moving forward with roadway improvements to 88th Street, which include expanding the right-of-way, full depth reclamation of the pavement area, addition of bike lanes, and finishing the east side of the roadway to include a tree lawn and sidewalk. The board approved on March 9th a construction contract with Goodland Construction in the amount of $1.79 million for the first phase of the work, which is the utility work, installation of potable water lines, reuse water lines, sanitary and storm sewer replacements and connections. Tonight, we're proposing a change order to that construction contract in the amount of $1,098,113 for the second phase of construction, which includes the full depth reclamation of the pavement for the 88th Street roadway. We have included some information on a possible roundabout at the base of the 88th Street Bridge that Alex has additional information on. He can update you on if the board is interested in doing that. That additional cost we estimate to be about $1 million with the traffic signal that would go in estimated to be $500,000. So an additional $500,000 for a roundabout if the board decided that it's something you want to pursue. That was additional cost for that. We're proposing to shut down the roadway, 88th Street, so we can get the work done as quickly as possible and get it reopened before school. Alex has had conversations with all the emergency services, fire, ambulance, hospital, police, as well as with the school district and the city of Louisville with regard to what we plan to do and the closure of 88th Street. If the school district decides, they haven't decided yet, but if they decide to close the schools for the season, rather than reopening, if the restrictions are lifted at the end of this month, then Goodland is prepared to move forward as quickly as possible to close the road and get started so we can get it open as soon as possible. Alex, do you have additional information that you'd like to share with the board?
Sure. Alex Arenello, Public Works Director. And I do have available on the remote access. Jason Murray with J&T Consulting, who's the project engineer, and Ben Moreland with Goodland Construction, the construction manager. I wanted to address a number of concerns the board raised at the March 9th board meeting. One was options to full closure of 88th. And we've determined that it's difficult to build the roadway half at a time because we are going to be replacing the base of 12 inches of fly ash treated subgrade and then 9 inches of asphalt paving. So to have traffic right next to that construction going on would be difficult. But we did look at potential option of building a bypass roadway along the east right-of-way line. And then we did put some cost to that and determined it would cost about $220,000 to build that bypass road. It would require probably about a month to install that asphalt roadway and then tear it out down the road. We'd also have coordination with the utilities that we would be installing. There will be some slow speed transitions at either end of the transition. So it'd be pretty difficult, problematic from a safety standpoint. So we do provide that information. That is an option if the board would like to pursue that. We did have a meeting with emergency management service agencies and also the Saddlebrook HOA. And I want to just report on that because we had that same meeting that I prepared the memo same day. But from emergency access standpoint, they were of course concerned with emergency response for the hospital across US 36 in Louisville. Goodland, our response, Goodland said that they would maintain an access route open for emergency vehicles through the project time period on a 24/7 basis. So we'd always have a way to get emergency vehicles through there. Goodland also committed to meeting with the emergency service providers on a weekly or periodic basis throughout the project construction period. Boulder Valley School District also attended that meeting. We discussed their schedule, and they hadn't made a decision about whether to cancel classes through the rest of the spring period. The last day of school is May 22nd. They do have 13 bus routes operating on 88th Street. So really closing before that time period would be a non-starter. So we would commit to only closing the road early if Boulder Valley School District decides to cancel classes. So we'll hold that open and see what they decide to do. But we would like, if they do close classes, to close the roadway around May 4th. Saddlebrook was also attended, and we talked about providing access for the Reliance Circle neighborhood through Saddlebrook. Saddlebrook HOA was opposed to that, just to have people that aren't used to their roads, and their roads are private roads, not really intended for public use. So they're opposed to using, opening it up for Reliance Circle residents, although it is open for emergency services in case that happens. So what we would propose to do would be to leave that segment of 88th from Shamrock South to Rock Creek Circle, Rock Creek Parkway. We would leave that reconstruction to the end of the project. So they would, Reliance Circle and Saddlebrook can use Shamrock and then take 88 down to Rock Creek Parkway through most of the project. And then at the end, before we do once the segment from Shamrock North to the bridge is bottom lift paved and ready to accept traffic, we would allow the Reliance Circle people to use that for access and then reconstruct the segment of 88th from Shamrock down to Rock Creek Parkway. And that would take about 2 weeks. So they would, Reliance Circle people would be inconvenienced. They would have to travel through Louisville to get access back to Superior. But we feel that that's probably the safest and best way of constructing the project. We did commit to having a Zoom meeting with the Saddlebrook residents and also with the Reliance Circle residents to discuss the construction access, their access during the construction project. Let's see what else. Pedestrian access during construction.
So Alex, I'm not sure I followed everything that you just said around access and closure dates, and it sounds like there was some developing information that was not in the memo. I'm going to need you to, I now have, and I recognize everybody's doing a great job and we're all heroes for showing up on Zoom, but not having, in a normal meeting, you'd be looking at a map and we'd have laser pointers. I now have a couple screens, and the screen that I'm also looking at now is a map that I need you to say what you said again and understand, and I want to better understand the exact predicted timelines around the access to 88th from the Reliance Circle neighborhood.
Okay, let me just try to bring up a. Okay, is that showing up?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if I can point.
You can zoom a little bit too, but you don't have to point. It's all right. We know the streets well enough. It's just.
Okay, you see the segment from Shamrock down to the Rock Creek Parkway roundabout? That segment would be open during most of the project period. So that would remain open. Reliance Circle is the circle that connects to Shamrock. So those.
And your preferred, do you mind if I ask a question during this? Your preferred position was that they would use the private right-of-way, correct? In the HOA said.
Not necessarily. We wanted to discuss that with the Saddlebrook residents and the HOA, find out the ramifications. And we found two things that they felt was that the roadways were narrow and may not be familiar to people that don't use them on a daily basis. So they had that issue. They were worried about damage to their roads with additional traffic that would be coming through. And so they opposed it in terms of opening that up for the general public to use.
And was that the feedback you got from a community meeting, or is that the official position of the HOA?
Well, there are several board members on our call, and several of them expressed those same concerns.
So not necessarily the official position, but if we ask them for the official position, that's probably where they'd land.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Alex, as we're talking about this, was there any discussion? I understand their concern about damage to the roads, and I hear that. I don't necessarily understand the concern necessarily related to people not knowing how to drive on narrow roads. We all drive through alleys and whatnot and seem to be able to maneuver our ways. But was there any discussion about the town providing any type of compensation that might be reasonable for the 2 weeks that the Reliance Circle people would be using the private roads to compensate for any possible damage that could occur to the roads for those 2 weeks?
Yes, we talked about that. Obviously, I would need to go out and look at it and try to assess what potential damage there would be. So it was hard for us to commit to that without really knowing what that route looked like, and whether it could be already in bad shape, and then are we improving their roads because of potential damage maybe already in bad shape and they're looking for improvements. So we weren't sure that was a viable option. But certainly we can go out and look and inventory the road and see if that's the problem. The other thing I think I wanted to mention is that if we open it up too soon, they may have traffic going through for 2 or 3 months rather than just staging and doing that segment to the south, to the circle, doing it at the end where we could just shorten it, and it'll be only 2 weeks of inconvenience to Reliance Circle users.
Alex, again, looking at just potential options, and I know this is probably a long shot, at the southeast corner of Reliance Circle, there's a footpath that leads out to the road that connects to Saddlebrook, but I believe is a town-owned and maintained road. Is there any way to set up some type of temporary detour that could change that from a footpath to a one-way road that the Reliance Circle vehicles could use?
I looked at that. I went by that Enterprise Street on the south, right at the south end of that drawing, and you can see the trail that goes through that. There are some trees there. There are some topography would have to be done. Again, it's probably a $30,000 or $40,000 improvement to make that passable for traffic. And that's certainly something we can investigate, but again, it's a two-week time period, and we want to spend additional dollars to put something like that in.
Yeah, I think we got to be careful here, guys. I mean, there's 50 homes. You assume 4 trips a day. That's 800 car trips per day that need to leave there. And I think trying to go through Saddlebrook or on the footpath, it's just too much volume to push on roads that aren't designed for it. I mean, I think what Alex has here is a decent compromise in terms of trying to do the north half of the road and then come back and do the south half of the road and inconvenience people the least amount possible. I mean, trying to push 800 extra cars per day through Saddlebrook. I mean, I like the out-of-the-box thinking, but that was really going to be a challenge because we'd have to leave the gates open for the Saddlebrook community the whole time, and that would just create all sorts of issues.
That's correct. The other thing that comes to mind is that for those people that are inconvenienced on a daily basis, if they want to park on Enterprise, or perhaps we could close a lane on Rock Creek Parkway. They would have to park on the street, but then they could walk to their residence and not inconvenience their daily commute patterns. Again, it's all walking, and it's something that we've done when we had done reconstruction in neighborhoods. When we closed roads, people had to walk a few blocks to get to their vehicles in order to get access to the vehicles from their homes.
I like that option.
Okay, if we could just go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I like that as an option for people, but at the same time, I mean, I'm thinking about a lot of the trips people make are with like groceries and stuff, and they may not, or, equipment or whatever, they may not be able to just very easily walk to their car. So while I like that as an option, and I think we should provide it, I also don't think it's, I don't know, for a short, as Alex mentioned, it's a pretty short time frame of about 2 weeks. So I don't think that and I realize 800 vehicles per day is a lot, but for a 2-week period, I don't think it would be the end of the world.
Well, hold on. I just want to be clear that I think we're all saying the same thing, right? So with and Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, really what we're talking about is the back half of this construction process. The last 3 weeks, where we do the stuff between Rock Creek, Circle, and Shamrock, and shutting that off and ensuring that those folks have a way out. And the options for getting out are to either go through Saddlebrook or to use the new asphalt on 88th Street North, right? It's either we try to do two projects, and Shamrock be the cutoff point, or we try to do it all in one project where Shamrock is shut out for the entire duration of the construction. And all those 800 trips would have to go through Saddlebrook or something else, right? That's a non-starter, right? So really what we're talking about is, for that community, the Reliance Circle 50 homes, that they will have access to the northbound 88th once the construction is done on the northbound half of 88th. But if, during the 2 to 3 weeks time period, they could park their cars on Discovery, or they can park their cars on Rock Creek Parkway, just to cut the distance and not have to circle around the community to get home.
That's correct.
Okay. But they will always be able to get, we're talking about shutting Shamrock down, actually, we're talking about shutting 88th Street down south of Shamrock only for the back half of this project, the back, actually not half, back 10th of this project, for those 2 weeks where we've got to do the stuff from Shamrock to Rock Creek Circle.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, the question was raised about pedestrian access, and we provided this graphic with pedestrian routes that would be available for various parts of Rock Creek. We will maintain the sidewalk on the west side of 88th for as long as we can. There may be times when that sidewalk has to be closed, and then there is another path that goes up, crosses Waldona, and then you can go up Boyero to get around the closure. But we don't expect really that to be very long if we do have to close it at all. So we expect to keep that sidewalk on the west open for most of the period. Up at the north end near Promenade, where the Promenade intersection comes in, we would maintain a pedestrian path to 88th for most of the time period throughout the construction. We would have to at some point close that portion of 88th where the pedestrian light is. So there would be some instance where you would have to take the west side path over the bridge, and then cross. Again, there's issues of where you're going to cross to get to the east side, because the walk doesn't go all the way to Campus Drive. But I think it does connect over to the bike path. I think it doesn't.
Yeah, you could loop underneath. Yes, you could loop underneath there. You could always. Yes, there's the bike path goes underneath and loops around, so you could cross. You can get to the other side of 88th without crossing over the road. You could, in theory, cross onto the road, even though it would be another 5, 6 minutes. But nobody's going to do it. But in theory, it's possible.
Yeah, and it is a dirt path too, right? There's not a direct asphalt connection to the bikeway. It's a dirt sort of 30 feet.
Yeah, yes. Right. So Alex, so I'm glad you talked about that you did the talk track over the visual aid, because the visual aid has the red line ending. So to be clear, and for the record, for the entirety of the project being closed, if somebody is working on Campus Drive, or a student is taking summer school or whatever at Monarch, you will be able to, pedestrians and cyclists will be able to get from this neighborhood or any neighborhood. It may be a little circuitous, but there will be a way to get over 88 for the entirety of the project.
Yes.
And
That's
actually,
really good.
And Kevin, to your point though, for the duration of the project, just north of the construction zone, there won't be any traffic. We could, if needed, we could just paint, a temporary crosswalk there, because there literally will be no one coming south on the bridge.
You're right. You're
Right,
right.
so-
You don't need to worry about the traffic. You're right.
Right. So we can, if we need to, magic marker or chalk a sidewalk, across here, I think we're pretty safe in the fact that any pedestrians can be able to get on the other side of the sidewalk very safely.
Well, construction vehicles presumably will use access there, but yeah.
You're right.
Right.
You're right.
Neil, you're right. On the north, we'll probably close the 88th Street north of the bridge, and we'll have barriers
Okay.
across. So right there, we could cross. We could paint a crosswalk on the other side of the barriers and let the pedestrians cross over there.
Good. Good.
Okay, I think that covers most of the other things I wanted to cover, except for the roundabout. Let me see if I can bring that up.
Hey, Alex, before we get to that, can we talk about the budget? I just want to talk about the memo we have from JT.
Sure.
There's a couple of cost items that you said went over the Goodland best price or best probable cost. And, I'll be honest, it was a little difficult to figure out how much they went over percentage wise, since you said, landscaping came in at 19,000, over what the estimate was. I had to go through the estimate. The estimate was, or I had to go and try to calculate what the estimate was, because the actual agreement from Goodland, for landscape remediation is 25K, which means that our third-party engineer estimated it at 6,000, which, by in itself, in the grand scheme of the project, it's 4% difference. It's not material in my mind. But when you look at this on the individual basis, when our engineer estimates $6,000, for example, and I only picked 2 items, our engineer estimates 6,000 for landscape restoration, and Goodland's coming in at 25. That's a big difference. And, I couldn't find anything in the notes that sort of supports, the relative difference. The asphalt one I get, it's tied to oil pricing, it's dynamic. And, one would argue that, if you go out and when you actually go and buy this stuff in May, it's probably even cheaper. But, for things like landscape or even the sidewalk where, the estimate came in at 31,000 over, the baseline in the contract said 154. So that means our third party engineer is at 123. That one, that's about, probably 30% over. So that one's not quite as bad, but the landscaping one to me seemed, significantly different. So, I don't want to derail the conversation today, but I mean, and in the memo, it says that you are all going to continue to work on trying to find lower cost ways of doing stuff. But I'd like to hear kind of some of the thought process on it today on, bridging the gap, because, if you recall, we've basically given this whole contract over to Goodland from January, and on the assumption that we're going to drive them to the best price, and we're going to try to get as close as possible and keep driving them there. So I want to make sure that we're not missing it, because that 4% is not immaterial when we're talking about a $3 million contract.
And maybe I can have our project engineer, Jason, chime in on this, because he examined he developed his cost estimate, and he examined Goodland's prices, and obviously there's some differences. Some units are higher and others are lower, but these are the major ones that he identified. Jason?
Sure, happy to talk through some of that. So as you mentioned, the asphalt one is a pretty straightforward one. That was bid competitively. For whatever reason, prices for asphalt have not really followed oil yet, so those prices are still a little bit higher. So that's the lowest price that was received through a competitive bid process with several subs to Goodland. The landscape restoration, I think it's important to mention on that really was an item that in the design we haven't really focused on very much yet, because there's a lot of back and forth between what might be done with the park development, and their landscape section may look differently than what is done out there in a temporary version. So I think the reason that you saw the bigger price difference in there is there just wasn't a ton of detail provided about that yet. But keep in mind, if that changes throughout the project, it is a cost of the work project. So if all we end up doing is seeding and restoration, it's probably closer to our $6,000 estimate. If we ended up planting more trees or doing irrigation, which is money that Goodland has kind of budgeted for some of that, then it might be closer to their 25. But ultimately, the town only pays for what you receive on that.
Okay. All right, that helps a lot. Thank you.
Can can we go over that with the rest of these variances as well?
Sure. So I'm looking at the memo. We've talked about the asphalt price, the 10-foot wide sidewalk. So that's the trail. That's a price that we went, what's really reflected there is an increase in concrete. And we priced it based on other bid items that we've received in the past in town of Superior, as well as other projects throughout the metro area. Concrete, for whatever reason this year, kind of the same like asphalt, has not dropped. It's just simply more expensive. So when you factor in that increased material costs, that's how the additional cost came up. Now, we can work with Goodland on that too and see if there's other providers, and concrete prices may change over the next few months. They may also go up too. It's a little bit of, you know, how good is your crystal ball with what's going to happen with all the COVID. But for right now, the material price just hasn't dropped that much. So that was the biggest difference in the sidewalk. Kind of the same with the underdrain pipe price. We've put underdrain in on past projects, but the materials are a little bit more expensive this year. The pipe is tied to the oil price. It's a plastic. So again, if oil drops, well, oil has dropped, but if we start seeing those trickle into, you know, kind of the more products, you'll probably see some savings on the overall pipe price. And again, we pay for what we get. It's a cost of the work project. So it all has to fit under the guaranteed max price. So we're going to continue to look for other options that were available there. Let me see. So we've talked about landscape, underdrain, and sanitary sewer pipe. That was one that we get when we got revised pricing. That's a relatively large sanitary sewer. It's 21 inch, and to meet the town spec, it's also a slightly unusual pipe spec. It's a very robust pipe to kind of deal with the swelling soils. So when that was actually priced this round, it came in just higher than we had thought. There's not very much sanitary sewer going in on this project. It was designed for a large extension down the entire east side of the roadway, but that's not warranted at this time. So all we're doing is building the stubs under the roadway. So that's why you might have also seen a change in unit cost, that we're building a whole lot less, so we don't have that economy of scale.
Now, one thing that I did hear you say, at least related to the asphalt, is that was competitively bid. Was the concrete work competitively bid as well, or is that not a significant enough cost to warrant that?
It could be. Anything in the project can be competitively bid, but we felt that in most cases for the concrete work, and there's numerous, if you look at the estimate, there's probably 20 other line items that deal with concrete. It seemed like Goodland was providing prices that were in line with what we expected to receive from past projects, with a slight 3% increase for this year. So it certainly could be competitively bid, and that's something that can be done at any time as well. But again, as part of the overall effort or the overall pricing, it seemed like, you know, with them being within 4%, it didn't seem like it was warranted to go out for that particular item to get a competitive bid.
Again, we would be, we're still sharpening our pencils with Goodland, but this is a guaranteed maximum price. So they've said, these are our prices at this point. It's not going to go up anymore. We'll continue to try to get the best prices we can and pass on the savings to us. Is that right, Ben? There you go. Oh,
that's the one thing that we want to make sure everybody's aware of, is the fact that, you know, we want to be as transparent as possible for this project. And if these kind of issues, the landscape, Jason's absolutely right in terms of why we were high on that one. That number has irrigation, has ways of building that out to where it's going to match in with the park development. Not knowing what the grades were going to look like behind the sidewalk, that was another driver on whether or not we need to use fabrics or anything like that to retain. So, but yeah, in terms of pricing, that we want to be as transparent as possible moving forward. And I've already started conversation with my asphalt subcontractors, knowing that oil prices are coming down. We need to be talking to their suppliers, figuring out how that's going to benefit this project. So it's going to continue down. That's my job, is to stay on these guys.
Okay, was there any, I think Alex was ready to transition now to talking about the roundabout. Was there anyone that wanted to speak to any other items before we transition to that item? Okay, seeing none, someone like to start off the roundabout discussion? Or Alex, why don't you start off the roundabout discussion? And
Okay,
others
so
can, go from there.
what we did is to look at the roundabout concept. Would a roundabout even work in this particular location? What's happening there? Okay, so we did bring on a roundabout specialist to help us lay this out, to look at the grades and the both ends of it, the promenade end, and I mean the east side and plus the west side, whether we need retaining walls, things of that nature, whether we can get the pedestrian crossings to function in the best manner, the safest manner. So this is the layout that we've been working with, and then we Jason worked up quantities for it, and then Ben with Goodland developed cost estimates. So the whole point tonight is to at least show this to you as an option, to gauge your interest in pursuing this. It's not necessary that we build this at this point. Obviously, the other two legs would not be functioning for more than a year, maybe 2 years before we have traffic on the side streets. The only sense it makes at this point is that we could do it within the time frame of the closing of 88th, and not have to come back. If we do this later, we would have to, probably close 88th for another period of time, and probably certainly be more expensive to do it at a later date. So the prices that Goodland came up with was about $1,075,000 to build this, and we're estimating that the cost of a signalized intersection with a left turn lanes would be about $500,000. So you'd have about a difference of $575,000 that would have to come from somewhere to fund this. Again, it doesn't decision doesn't have to be made today. We'd like to gauge the board's interest or non-interest in this, and we could bring this back if there are additional questions, additional information you'd like us to collect. But we wanted to make sure you're aware that this is something we could do this year, and build it with the project, but it would have a cost.
So I'll start.
Thanks.
Alex, when we were talking, whether it was budget meetings earlier in the year or whether it was other meetings related to 88th, I know we had talked about the costs of a roundabout versus a signalized intersection. And I thought at that time we had talked about how, since we'll be starting from basically the ground up, building 88th here, we weren't going to be looking at a large disparity in costs, and that they'd be relatively equal. Clearly, that's not the case anymore. Can you walk us through why we're seeing such a large increase in the cost of the roundabout compared to what we had talked about in prior meetings?
I don't recall. I think this is pretty comparable to what I had said before, about $1 million for a roundabout, and the difference being about $500,000.
All right.
And I do also, we're building a fourth leg on this, and that cost could be recouped. Again, whether we build that leg or not is something that could also be taken out of the cost of this roundabout here.
Can you just be specific what you're talking about there, Alex? The fourth leg you're talking about on the west side promenade? What, I don't
On the
understand.
east side, on the east side.
The Zaharias property. Alex, can you speak a little bit to, and it sounds like this is fairly conceptual at this point, so it's easy to adjust if necessary, but can you speak to the way the bike lanes are drawn here? If I'm looking at this correctly, it looks as if the bike lanes will transition from 88th up onto the sidewalks to go through the circle, and then will then transition back out of the sidewalks once they get past this traffic circle. Which I believe is similar to the way the roundabout at 88th and Rock Creek Parkway is intended to operate. Is this a best practice? Is this typically how these types of roundabouts are designed? My observation is that I rarely see bikes actually transition up onto the sidewalk, and whether just building in the bike lanes or at least some type of plan for bikes using the roundabout is actually more prudent from the outset.
Okay, the best practice for handling bikes at a roundabout is to allow them to go through the roundabout as a vehicle, not to provide a bike lane within the roundabout or the roundabout approach. And most competent bicyclists, or the bicyclists that really like to ride on the roads, they're comfortable with that because they're going through the roundabout similar at speed similar to what vehicles are going through. But we do have cyclists that are intimidated, and the best practice is to provide a path for bikes to get off the bike lanes up on the sidewalk, and if they want to traverse the roundabout as a pedestrian and basically use the crosswalks, they have that option. So that's the best practice for roundabout design, is to provide both pathways for bikes, go through the roundabout or go up on the sidewalk.
Thank you. The other question I had relate probably around the majority of emails and resident feedback we received. Can you just real quick walk through the safety features here for pedestrians to cross 88th?
Well, certainly. So we provided paths on all four legs for pedestrians to traverse the roundabout. And in terms of pedestrian safety, it really goes back to vehicular pedestrian conflicts. And in a normal four-way intersection, there are 24 vehicle pedestrian conflicts. With a typical roundabout, the number of conflicts is reduced from 24 to 8 conflict points where pedestrian paths cross vehicle paths, and there could be conflicts. What we provided for pedestrians is a couple of things. First, they cross one roadway at a time, one direction of travel at a time. If you're coming, wish I had my pointer. Can anybody figure out how I do a pointer? But if you come, let's say you're crossing from the Amherst neighborhood and you want to go across where the pedestrian signal is right now, you would cross the southbound traffic first and make eye contact with those vehicles, and then you cross to the pedestrian refuge, and then you look the other direction for vehicles traveling north. Again, make contact. Those vehicles are having to yield anyway. They're slowing down. Make eye contact with the driver if there are vehicles, and then cross the roadway. That particular crosswalk, we would propose to put in a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, so there would be additional protection for pedestrians. They could push the button and you'd have a flashing across that sidewalk. We've also been debating whether to put the rapid flashing device on the other approach, the north, along the north leg. And of course, we could do both to provide crossings of 88th Street. probably don't need them crossing the side streets because the volumes are fairly low. So we have, first of all, protected crosswalks. Pedestrians are only crossing one stream of traffic at a time. And the other big benefit is that vehicles are slowing down to 15, 20 miles an hour as they traverse the roundabout and cross over the crosswalks. So that's one of the biggest benefits of roundabouts, is that we're slowing the speeds down for all the vehicles. So, and if you've seen some of the graphs of collisions at various speeds, you have a much greater potential of surviving an accident with a vehicle at speeds in the 15, 20 miles versus 35 to 40 miles per hour speeds. So those are some of the benefits that we would have with roundabouts.
Thanks, Alex. That was great. I appreciate that. And I like the thought that if we do move forward with this, that there could be the flashing beacons on the north side as well. Appreciate it.
Alex, I was able to find today, so first, creative option. I think when we all looked at the option, we didn't think there was a way to squeeze it in, particularly with almost U-turn on the west side with promenade. So interesting option. I was able to find the Federal Highway Association, their effectively design guidelines, and their typical inscribed circle diameter is between 105 feet and 150 feet. If I understand yours, it would be about 110 feet. Looking there, you have 10-foot truck aprons on each side, 18-foot circulating lanes, then a 54-foot island. So if my math is right, that's about 110 feet.
That's correct.
Optimally, what can you tell us about the circle diameter on other effectively 2-lane roundabouts?
Single lane
roundabouts. I guess a single lane roundabout, right?
Well, the one we have a good example is McCaslin and Colton. And I believe that's 130 feet compared to the 105 feet that we have here. So it's a little wider.
Okay. So let me just go. Well, I appreciate the design and the creativity, and I agree that roundabouts, I've told you this before, I'm sort of sold on the safety of roundabouts. You still get some crunch points, but the accidents obviously aren't as bad. The injury accidents are reduced, particularly with single lane roundabouts. So I love the idea of putting one here. Unfortunately, if this is the best we could do, from my perspective, number one, it doesn't fit. And number two, it's money that we just don't have for, pretty significant incremental cost. And three, I just don't love the pedestrian pinch points on this one.
Alex, can I ask a question? And Alex, you and Matt have been very gracious with your patience and my, 900 different questions about this project. When we when we talked about 88th Street 6 months ago, we basically looked at options of a 2-lane right away or a 4-lane right away, and relative to the 4-lane right away, incremental cost was almost immaterial. So we said, let's go do that. At some point, we'll have to expand the bridge or whatnot. But, if we gave the green light on this roundabout today and approved it sometime in the future, we're going to have to expand it. At some point, if we're going to redo the bridge, we're going to have to expand this roundabout. And with what Kevin just said, and just knowing how close the road already is to the homes on the west side, could you even make or even create a 4-lane roundabout in this area?
Well, we wouldn't expand on the west side. I mean, that west side is pretty well fixed. The expansion would have to go on the east side, and there is room to probably get it out to 150 feet, which would probably be adequate for a multi-lane roundabout, 2 lanes in each direction, north and south. So it could be done. It would probably have to be done when the bridge would be widened to go to 4 lanes. So
Okay.
We wouldn't rule that out, but again, that would be a major project if we build a roundabout now, then to try to expand it to 4 lanes, to accommodate 4 lanes of traffic on 88th.
Okay, so I mean, because that's kind of where I've come down with this, and you know, a week ago I was dead set against it. You know, having nearly been run over at every roundabout in town because the drivers were looking in the opposite direction where I'm at, and the fact that we have a signalized crossing dedicated here for kids to get to the other side of the street, and then we got to ask ourselves, why do the kids have to cross the road in Superior? Well, it's because Louisville doesn't have a sidewalk on their side, and because of that, everybody in the Superior side has to cross in Superior and then walk along the east side to get to Campus Drive. And that's not going to change because it looks like Superior, or rather Louisville, doesn't have any real interest in moving forward with the west side sidewalk in the near term. So given that, kids in Superior, and you said 18 bus routes, so there's not a small number of kids here, but 18 bus routes worth of kids, and a few of them will walk in the summer, need to cross the road. I think the roundabout here now is premature. We don't have the volumes on Promenade or Zaharias to support it. And while I do like, doing it when it's easier, like now, I'm kind of the opinion, with what Kevin just said, the incremental cost here is not insignificant, but it more importantly, it's a cost we spend today. The $1 million today versus the $500,000 in the future for the signal. If we do nothing, it's no different than what it's at today. The kids have a dedicated stoplight to cross on, when needed, and cars will stop. They do stop for that. As volumes increase on Promenade of Zaharias, we can look at a 4-way signal or the potential expansion of the roadway and then do the roundabout then when we're redoing the bridge anyways. If the coronavirus economic meltdown weren't happening, I might have an appetite for really spending some more time on this thing. But I just can't see residential development, continuing at the same pace, the next couple of years to really pull this spending into 2020. But I do appreciate everything you guys have given me, and just so everyone is aware, I've really pestered Alex, on the roundabouts around schools, because this is a huge issue for me. I don't let my kids cross at roundabouts without an adult, because I myself, slightly over 5 feet, have not been seen by drivers. So when we got 3.5 foot, 4 foot tall kids, it's even less likely to be seen. And it's because the drivers are always looking to their left. Often they'll glance to the right. And as a bike rider, as a motorcycle rider, I preach the value of eye contact. It's just not something that kids grasp onto right away. So, it's been a struggle for me to come around on this. But, the one value that roundabouts provide is they slow things down. And mark my words, once 88th is done, it's going to be fantastic. It's going to look like Colton. It's going to be super smooth, and everyone's going to be speeding like crazy. And the roundabout provides a tremendous amount of friction. And I don't know how else we can get that to keep people coming off that bridge and prevent them from flying down the rest of 88th. I just wish there were a cheaper way of doing it.
Your points are well taken.
Thanks.
Anybody want to go next, or I can go? I've learned a lot in my 11 years of planning commission and being on the board from Alex about transportation, and I see that we spend a lot of money on roads. We make them look real nice and straight, and then we spend an enormous amount of time on fixing them and slowing them down. Just tonight, we've got a speed bump on our agenda that we haven't talked about yet. And I'm afraid we're headed down that same path with this. Neil, you're exactly right. We're going to have a really nice straight road that is going to be designed for higher speeds. And I think people are going to take advantage of that. Roundabouts work because they are an obstacle that people got to go around. And so you're designing it for slower speeds, just like we designed downtown with narrower streets. And so we've designed slower speeds into the equation, and that is safer. I I completely get the concerns about pedestrians crossing roundabouts. I've had similar challenges as well, but we've got to think about this road in terms of a 24/7 road and not just a morning and afternoon road. I mean, we want this road to perform 24/7. And if it becomes a raceway, except when people are hitting pedestrian signals and things, and then I don't think we haven't fixed anything there. We've just made a problem worse, and we're going to be looking at speed bumps and other things. So, I've also heard the concerns about, well, what about a roundabout at the bottom of the hill? And we had the same exact conversation with McCaslin and Main Street before that roundabout was built. And in fact, it was a lot more conversation and concern about, roundabout at the bottom of the hill. But I think that roundabout has performed very well. And so I don't really have the, similar concerns about the location of it, the diameter of it. If we've got room to expand it, if we were expanding the road, I mean, it seems like we could expand the single lane roundabout and get that more in conformity. And so I'm in favor of moving ahead with the roundabout, and interested to hear others' comments. Thanks.
So Clint, I'm glad you just went. You basically said pretty much everything I was thinking with regard to the roundabout, the hill there, the speed. Neil, I definitely hear your points around pedestrians and making sure that we can improve their crossings at the roundabout. But I would like to see us take this opportunity to figure out how can we educate our community on how best to use a roundabout. We've heard concerns about pretty much every roundabout in town, around pedestrians not knowing which way to look, drivers knowing which way to look. I think this would be a great opportunity for us to put a roundabout in and also accompany it with a lot of strong messaging. When we installed the Zephyr and Triptych at the roundabout on McCaslin, we talked about at one point potentially, having some programming around the opening, where we included teaching kids how to safely cross at a roundabout, teaching drivers how to do that. I would really like to see us explore avenues like that, so that we are getting the slowdown that comes with having a roundabout there, and that we're also getting the safety aspect.
So I agree with both Trustees Kwasinski and Mayor Folsom. I think if we're going to do this job while we're looking at it and we don't necessarily have this $500,000 above budget in our budget right now, I think this is one of the reasons why we are here and we're doing the job we are. We have to make these hard decisions, and we'll have to look at the budget and see what might need to be removed, or if we have budget money elsewhere that can be reprogrammed. But if we're going to do a job, I think we should do it right early on in the process and the first time. I hear Kevin's concerns. Alex, I'd love to hear as we get closer to the actual final design stage rather than the conceptual phase, whether or not there's anything we can do with maybe the angles of the road to find a bit more in the diameter, address some of the questions Kevin came up with. I think we have strong safety mechanisms in place, like Alex spoke to, but this really is just, in my mind, doing the job right the first time and getting it done without having to come back 1, 2, 3 years from now and shut the road all over again, and disrupting our residents' lives all over again.
Thanks,
I am generally a supporter of roundabouts. And if you had asked me a week or two ago, I would have said, absolutely, we should be doing a roundabout at this location. With the stay-at-home order and the opportunity to ride my bike around Superior a lot over the past 2 weeks, I took the opportunity to go over and ride the new trail through Lanterns Lane and ride down Promenade and just kind of experience it from the perspective of a bicyclist and also from the perspective of a pedestrian. I went there with my 2 8-year-old sons to see what they felt about that intersection. And I think that the conclusion that I drew from all of this is just the topography of that site, with the geometry of the bridge. You have people coming down south on 88th, well in excess of 35 miles an hour. And people don't drive at the speed limit that we set for a road. They drive at the speed at which the road kind of forces their cars, right? People fly down Rock Creek Parkway, not because it's 35 miles an hour, but because it's a 30-degree pitch, and it's just going to cause people to travel fast. And we just have the challenge of people coming down off the pitch of that bridge, that regardless of whether there's a roundabout or not, people are going to be entering that roundabout at 25, 30 miles an hour. And I just don't think that there's a way for it to be a safe crossing for pedestrians or bicyclists. I think the only way to make that crossing safe is to have a four-way stop sign, four-way stoplight, and make it really apparent that when pedestrians are crossing, they're crossing when everybody is stopped. Because I agree with what Kevin and what Neil said. When people enter a roundabout, they typically look to the left, they don't look to the right, and that's just a potential disaster waiting to happen from the perspective of pedestrians and bicyclists. So considering the geography, the actual topography of the site, the slope, and given the fact that there are so many kids that are going to be taking this is a unique roundabout, right? This is not like any other roundabout in town. This is the roundabout that all of these kids who are going to Monarch K through 8 and the high school are going to be taking on foot and with a bicycle. So I think given that, we really don't have the real estate, it's going to be a narrow roundabout, given that the volume is so high that there is the slope coming off of the bridge. I just don't think that a roundabout really works in this location. And then when you couple in the additional $500,000 on top of this project, I just don't think that this particular intersection works with a roundabout. I think roundabouts are great. I think they work 95% of the time. I think that this particular intersection, when you consider that kids are going to be using it, when you consider the slope, I just don't feel that it's safe. And I think that that's borne out by the communication that we got from most of the residents who live in, the Amherst and Weldona neighborhoods. We didn't get a single email from residents saying, we really need a roundabout here. All of the email communication that we got from residents was, I don't think that a roundabout's going to actually work here. And what they would really prefer is to have a stoplight, really a clear crossing for kids to get there, because it is a challenge and people are going to be crossing because Louisville doesn't have a sidewalk on the other side. That's where the sidewalk ends, right? Is in Louisville. So I think in this situation, I just don't think that a roundabout is right for this particular intersection.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Sandy?
Originally, I was very, very supportive of the roundabout going here. But the more I have just listened to the conversation in general, I'm very concerned. I think there's a problem with the traffic coming off the bridge. It's not like the McCaslin roundabout where there's a lot of lead up before you get to that roundabout, and you have plenty of time to figure out how to approach it. We don't have that situation happening here. You come over that bridge and you're pretty much on it, and you're going 35 miles an hour. And so from that standpoint, but the bigger issue for me is I don't think the roundabout is conducive to safety for our cyclists or the children. And, yes, it makes a difference as far as auto safety, but for me, the bigger issue is our pedestrians and cyclists. And this roundabout's just too tight to be safe. And so as much as I think roundabouts are great, I just don't think this is the right location for one now that I see it all drawn out.
Okay, thanks, Sandy. So it sounds like we're pretty evenly split with a slight lean towards no on the roundabout, if I'm hearing everyone correctly. Is there any further discussion on roundabout? Okay. Is anyone have any further questions of staff or contractor, anyone? Can offer an opportunity for public comment.
One additional
Is there
point
anyone
that
listening to the meeting that would like.
One additional point, I think, with respect to the speeds, I think the median that is contemplated within 88th is going to do something to slow down the general flow of traffic on 88th.
Okay, thank you for that point. Okay, we do have one person that has raised their hand to speak. Kelly McCauley.
Hi, can you hear me?
You can.
Or am I muted? You are
Yes,
unmuted.
go ahead.
All right.
You are live. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Yeah, I live
Yes, go ahead.
Kelly McCauley, 1950 Shamrock Drive in Superior. 88th totally affects me, and yeah, roundabout. No, I totally agree with the stop sign at the end, because when you widen the road, we're going to have more bicycles and people using it, and it's all going to bottleneck at that bridge anyway. Even if you say you're going to widen it one day, that's way in the future. And also, I resent putting a road into the Saharis property when that hasn't even been rezoned. You guys know I'm always the squeaky wheel about that. Why and where are we getting the money? Are we getting money from developers yet to improve 88th? And if so, have we taken any from the developer that wants to do Saharis? Because I wouldn't think that would be legal, because wouldn't that influence the changing of the zoning and everything? I just want to make sure we're not getting, because I'm reading like reports on what they've offered, and they're offering us money to improve the road. And that's like putting the cart before the horse. I don't think we should be taking money from anybody. I don't know if the Anderson property people are contributing. And why should all of Superior have to pay for 100 and something homes on one side and how many other on the other? That's just my opinion. I want Saharis to be kept as an open space. And again, please send someone to go look at what they've done of dumping all the land in the containers on the Saharis with the prairie dogs and stuff, and the other birds that are now hatching all around that area. So that really concerns me. And that's it. I just want to thank you, and hopefully we keep the stoplight and save the money. And also for, if you guys haven't been in Saddlebrook, we do not have sidewalks, and our streets are thinner. So extra cars going through my neighborhood, we got some kind of, trees all over. So you have to be really careful walking around. And if people that don't know the neighborhood come through, and they're not going to do the 15 miles an hour that we have posted throughout our neighborhood. So that is a big concern as a resident of Saddlebrook, letting our gates open to other people. What happens if someone gets hit or hurt? Like, whose responsibility is that? Is the town going to take over the responsibility because we've opened our gates to another neighborhood that doesn't know our streets? Anyway, I'm rattling on. Thanks a lot, and good luck. Everyone stay healthy. Bye.
Thank you very much for the comments. All right, next up, we've got Chris Cole is next, and then Susan Bauer on deck. So go ahead, Chris Cole.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to go back to one of my original questions from the comments. I'm just wondering if, when putting together the estimate for the roundabout, Ben, who just dropped off, I was wondering if he did any real property acquisition estimates for that roundabout, because as you extend east into the Saharis property, you do eat up a big chunk of their property, and there is some more grading out as the road it drops off from the road down there. So I'm not sure if the estimate is just for the product that's going around, the asphalt, the cement, the lights, etc., or if it does include more grading out and real property acquisition. So is $1 million just a low estimate, and is it going to go up from there and subsequently cost the town a lot more money than what we're proposing right now? That's one question. Then the other side is that I do agree that, you know, if you are looking about doing a roundabout, now would be the time to do it, just to lay it out for the future rather than try and do it down the road. But that being said, I think it's going to be extra cost than what we're seeing right now. I'd like to have that addressed.
Okay, thank you for the comments. And just from our prior discussion with the board, it sounds like the board's preference is to not proceed with a roundabout at this time. So it does not look like we're going to be moving in that direction. And so that's a little follow up there. Okay, we'll go ahead with Susan Bauer next. Susan, go ahead. Go ahead. You're live.
Great. We're all adjusting to our new paradigm. Thank you. I'd like to expand on what Kelly McCauley mentioned. I think one of the things to provide clarification is the streets within Saddlebrook are narrow, and they are not of a particular grade or quality that would support heavy utility trucks. Right now in Saddlebrook, we are not able to allow waste management trucks to drive up and down the streets and provide curbside pickup. As a result of that, we have to do curbside hand delivery pickup on our streets. So it's something that we can work out with Alex to talk about. But that is a concern, and that I don't know if the navigation of the streets, if there would have to be some retooling to accommodate potential emergency traffic. It's just something to bring up and explore. I don't want to condone any ideas at this point, because this is the visioning for 88th is something that affects all of us, and we want to make sure we come up with a solution that is reasonable and accommodates everybody's needs, particularly the folks on Reliance Circle. Second, I'd like to endorse what Sandy Hammerly said. The cars coming off of 88th or coming across the bridge and heading southbound are usually at a faster speed. And Mark Lasis also touched on this. As much as I would like to endorse a roundabout, unless there was a reciprocal roundabout on the Louisville side, I don't see it working for us. So those are my two comments.
Okay, thank you very much. And Kenneth Woodruff, you are next with a hand raise.
Unmute now. All right. No?
Go ahead. Go ahead. You're live.
All right, there we go. I got thumbs up from Laura. Good to go. Guys, look, just wanted to first and foremost say thank you for keeping our town up and running in this wild time. You know, as was mentioned, a lot of money to be considering spending at the moment with everything happening, but obviously we continue to look to the future. I live on South River Bend, back up to the ponds right by the roundabout at 88th and Rock Creek. And as much as I would love to see a roundabout put in between the Zaharias property there and Anderson, one of our hobbies in the evenings when it's nice is to sit out on the deck and listen to cars squeal around the roundabout at 88th and Rock Creek. We get a lot of honking, and you know, we have 4 small kids and do a lot of traversing on foot and bike, and of course by car up on 88th and around the roundabout as well. And God, as much as I would love to have one there, I struggle to see it working. I lean towards going the other direction, unfortunately, though. I think largely based on the hill, but cars are flying up the hill, coming towards our house, going through that roundabout too. So The other confounding factor being that eventually we'd like to expand the bridge and would probably require, redoing the, what was it, about $1 million for the roundabout to expand that there as well to widen the road. So again, thanks for the work, guys. I appreciate the consideration, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how this continues to progress and other options that we might have in the future for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Any additional public comment on this agenda item? All right, seeing none, we'll end public comment. Is there any additional discussion? Board, I do want to respect Laura's request to take a quick recess, so we'll do that here shortly, but just wanted to kind of close out this topic or this agenda item. Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, just in light of everything we've heard, both from the public and also from the rationale of my fellow board members, I would be supportive of changing from the roundabout to the traffic light.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything further? It doesn't look like we need to take any action on anything. Well, we do need to adopt a resolution on this item. So is there any further questions or discussions before we move on that resolution? Neil?
No, I was only going to make a motion, but only when we're ready.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion on resolution
R-29.
29 Series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a change order to the construction contract with Goodland Construction Incorporated for Phase 2 of the 88th Street Improvement Project.
Motion by Trustee Shaw and second by Trustee Lish. Roll call vote.
Shaw,
Yes.
Kwasinski,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Lish,
Yes.
Lasis,
Yes.
Hammerly,
Yes.
Folsom.
Yes. All right, motion passes unanimously. Thanks, everyone. And let's take a 5-minute recess. Is that 7-minute recess? And we will be back to discuss the 3 items from the consent agenda, then do reports, issues, and questions. All right, so we'll be in recess. Okay, Neil, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, good. All right, we are ready to get back into the meeting. Thanks for everyone coming back. All right, let's do item 3D, which is, Laura, you pulled that from the consent. Adoption of a resolution approving agreement with RC Special Events for equipment rental. So go ahead, Laura.
Yes, so I pulled this item, and I want to thank town staff. I really like the idea of getting one contract set for the whole year, both from an efficiency standpoint as well as the cost savings. But I definitely thought we might need to make some adjustments to what we have in there. So right now, for example, Arbor Day is still listed in the contract, whereas we've already talked about canceling that. So I'd like to see us pull that. And I was happy to see that we have a clause in there that says that we can cancel events with 30 days notice. But I already have some concerns around the July 4th event, and just the idea of bringing thousands of people together into one park, one area, you know, lining the streets, et cetera. I don't pretend to know what the coronavirus is going to look like come July. But my guess is that we probably won't want to get that many people together in one area. Now, I understand that the scope of our agenda item tonight isn't necessarily to talk about what July 4th looks like, but I would really like us to have a discussion about that at some point. And I think it's important for us to start considering what are some alternatives to our traditional events. I think everyone knows I love July 4th. One of my favorite days of the year in Superior, but I just have concerns about the way the event's been done in the past may not work for us this year.
Okay, thanks, Laura. Matt, or would you or Leslie like to respond to some of those questions?
Yeah, in the agreement under section 3D, I think staff feels that gives us the flexibility to remove equipment for an event, whether it's canceled or there's modifications needed for it. So I think we feel like we're covered, but if the board would like to add additional language, we're open to that, to provide additional coverage if you think it's needed for any event. As far as future events, I think it's a little too early I think we should wait to see where we're at in a month or two as far as future events and how those might be impacted by the current situation. But it's definitely a discussion that would be good to have. It's just, I think, a little too early just to have that conversation until we know what things are going to look like in the next month or two.
So just for clarification, so the contract is a $36,000 commitment. If we cancel one or more events, we do not have to spend that money for those events, provided that we do so within a reasonable time. Is that? And if it's a reasonable time, how much time do we need to give notice to the vendor?
The contract says 30 days notice.
And Leslie, I think Leslie's on with us as well, and she can confirm in our conversations with the vendor that we've already talked to them about Arbor Day, of course. But Leslie, do you have any additional information?
The discussions with all of the bidders for this service was that we would provide that 30-day, kind of like a 30-day order, so we can adjust what we need for each event, whether it grows a little bit or shrinks a little bit. And yes, we have already notified RC Special Events that Arbor Day is not going to happen. So it's basically they provide us with a line item cost for things that we add or subtract.
So if the board, I mean, we could make the adjustment now to remove the $2,855.70 from this agreement if you wanted to, but based on our already notifying the vendor, we wouldn't incur those costs even if you approved it as is tonight.
So, yeah, so I think you guys have to, first to support what Laura said, I like the idea of having a single vendor. I think it was a good idea. Compared to previous years, unfortunately, it doesn't look like we saved any money, but I like having a single vendor that gets to know our community a little bit. So it's great. It's just what you guys are telling us, the contractual language just, and if they're a partner and they're a local entity, and of course, if we're going to cancel something with 45 or 35 days, of course, they're not going to charge us. The contract probably could use a little bit of tightening. I don't think it would be worth our time to tighten that contract now, but maybe just ask Kendra to give it a quick review just to make sure that 30 days is appropriate with no cancellation fees. The expectation from the board, which is loud. Okay, then we're square.
We've added a force majeure clause. If you look at the very last section of the main contract, it specifically refers to the pandemic now. So to the extent we still have an emergency order in place or a state of emergency from the state, there are lots of things, but if to the extent that's still in place, we can cancel any event or the entire contract without penalty.
Good. And I do think, these guys are local. So obviously, I think Laura makes good points around the 4th of July. It would obviously be premature to change the scope of what we have, and hopefully it'll be the biggest parade ever when this thing is behind us. But in the event it's not, we should definitely make that decision. And frankly, we should probably make that decision in May, not in June, right? So we just got to watch the clock and treat our vendors professionally and give them as much notice as possible.
And I guess what I would add on to that, and please feel free to stop me on this because I realize it's not as much about the contract, is I would like us to start brainstorming what creative ways can we celebrate the 4th of July without necessarily putting everybody into one place like we've done in years past. So that's somewhat related to the contract and somewhat a different topic.
And staff have been brainstorming some ideas for a virtual 4th of July if that's needed. So thank you for that lead in.
Great. Hopefully it won't have to be totally virtual, but I think there's probably some compromise we can reach. Thanks, Leslie.
Okay, if there's nothing further, I'll entertain a motion to approve this resolution. Someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution number R-26, Series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement with RC Special Events for event rental equipment.
Second.
Okay, motion by Trustee Lish, second by Trustee Hammerly, and Phyllis, roll call vote, please.
Lish,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Kwasinski,
Yes.
Folsom,
Yes.
Emmerly,
Yes.
Lasis,
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes unanimously. And the next item up for discussion is item 3E, which is adoption of a resolution approving the Boulder County Youth Corps intergovernmental agreement. And Kevin, you wanted to speak on this item?
Yeah, I pulled it. I looked. First of all, I think this is a great program, and I'm glad we fund it. I think it's great for the kids. I've seen them working in past years, and so definitely want to continue. I noticed, and I'm pulling this up right now, that the funds for this program are identified in the Open Space Fund. I didn't quite digest that from previous years. And, but I didn't look every previous year, but I did look at the resolution from last year, and it was the same. It does come from open space, and I'm sure you guys all noticed that it was from the budget, but I know we've gotten a little bit of pushback from OSAC that the open space fund should be used for a singular purpose. And so I pulled it for two reasons. Number one, to ask the question whether or not OSAC has weighed in on this. And number two, just to increase level of visibility to make sure people are aware that it's coming from the open space fund.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the Open Space Committee has discussed this item. We typically go over with each of the committees the budget for the proposed budget for the upcoming year when the board's getting ready to review it and ask for their comments and suggestions to the board. And I don't know if this came up or not. I don't remember it coming up, but depending, the other thing that will come into consideration here in future budgets is, and expenditures out of this fund is if we have any acquisitions of open space this year, it could impact, what expenses come out of this. But most of the work that the Youth Corps does is in the open space areas, trail work and those type of things.
Yeah, so let me be clear, Matt. I'm supportive of it.
Okay.
Right? We got some, again, pushback from members of OSAC from this fund should be used exclusively for the purpose of the acquisition of open space. Right. That is not my interpretation. We have used it historically for other reasons, and my favorite reason is we built a parking lot using open space funds. Now it's a parking lot to access open space, but now we're getting some resistance. I don't want to blend too much, but we're getting resistance around, do we increase the amenities for pedestrians and cyclists and picnickers? Picnickers, that's a word, right? So if we've made it easy for cars to access, I think we should also make it easy and inviting for vehicles and pedestrians to access. We got resistance. I suspect OSAC is going to be resistant when this is called out, and I'd like for them, as our important committee, to have a voice on this. Last year, we voted on this, not in the, I think it was, we voted on this in the second week in April meeting. And so there's probably no reason why we couldn't kick this for 2 weeks and vote second week in April. But Leslie, I don't know if you have a deadline or something you're trying to meet, but I know last year we did it the second April meeting.
I'm sure we could push this back to the next meeting and give us an opportunity to pose that question directly to the OSAC members.
So logistically, that doesn't make sense because OSAC is already met for the month. So we've already missed that opportunity to have OSAC review it this month. So Kevin, I appreciate what you're saying, but unless we're going to push it back to May, we're not going to have any new information from OSAC at the next meeting than we do tonight.
That's correct. We would have to push it until May board meeting to allow OSAC time to review after theirs. So you are correct there. I don't anticipate the Youth Corps is going to be doing any work in the month of May.
And the question for me is if we hear from OSAC that they oppose this being funded out of the open space fund, is the suggestion or recommendation be that it come out of the general fund then?
I don't know, Matt. I mean, it's a day.
Kevin, I think you froze there.
Guys, are we okay?
Kevin, do you want to try turning off your video and see if we can get the sound?
I guess I'm back. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got kicked out. Yeah, I suppose everybody else had the observation. We've gotten feedback from OSAC that they wanted to be aware when their money was spent. They recognize that it's their job to make recommendations and it's our job to provide approvals. And so I'm not sure if the approval will change one way or another, but I do think it's appropriate to ask for their recommendation.
Yeah, and as the liaison to OSAC, I'm not even sure they're aware of it. I mean, I got to tell you, Kevin, you caught something that I wasn't aware of, or if I did, it zoomed out of my brain. And I absolutely agree. We need to ask OSAC before we move forward with this.
And I think
and I don't know where we are if they say no. But, that's a different matter.
Their meeting's the second. Is it the second Wednesday of the month?
Yes.
Okay, so this would get pushed to May 26th. And then I would just also state that, again, that we do review the proposed budgets with the committees each year. And I don't know if we received any comments with regard to this line item.
So I'm not going to speak for OSAC now because I'm clearly not on the committee anymore, but I was on the committee for several years and was part of these conversations before I joined the board. And the basis for many of these conversations lied in the fact that we wanted to make sure that open space funds were going to purposes that first and foremost did either add to our open space amenities or increased and improved access to our open space amenities. And I think there was an underlying concern from the committee, and there probably always has been, that we don't use the funds to such an extent that we're not able to actually execute on a purchase if and when that becomes an opportunity. I think looking at this amount and knowing that historically this program has been funded from the Open Space Fund, and knowing that we have bonding capabilities that we're approving, actually already approved tonight, I don't think this would raise to the level of concern that that we get such strong pushback from OSAC that they would say do not move forward with this program if it can only be paid for with open space funds, rather than pushing this topic all the way back to the second meeting in May. My preference would be move forward with it tonight.
I agree with Ken, and I appreciate the fact that, Kevin, that you pulled this. My suggestion would be that we move forward with it tonight, but I think that this does merit a conversation to have with OSAC, frankly, for our benefit and for OSAC's benefit, so everybody gets on the same page with respect to what specifically is the Open Space Fund being used for, year in, year out, besides open space acquisitions. So we've got open space acquisitions, we've got or what has it been used for over the past, the recent history, right? So there's a parking lot next to open space. There's, maybe some furniture associated with the picnic shelter, things like that. There's these sorts of programs. I think it does merit having that conversation with OSAC so they can, I think, fully understand, and they don't come, as a surprise when all of a sudden they're listed on a board agenda and we're considering a particular fund request. So I do think that it's a worthwhile discussion to have. I think tonight, and given the schedule and given the fact that this has been historically funded, and in the grand scheme of things, this is relatively a small ask, we should just move forward. But I do think that this warrants having a conversation just so everybody can get better educated on what the funds are used for.
Yeah, if it's not practical to pull OSAC, I didn't have the count. I wasn't thinking about the calendar. So number one, if it's not practical to get OSAC's voice within the next couple of weeks, that's fine. Of course, it makes sense. I agree with it's not material. There's a nice history for doing this. And I obviously am supportive of doing this because I think it's a great program. I'm just sharing what I heard from previous OSAC board members, committee members, which is they feel very strongly about open space funds should be used for open space. I disagree, right? And so, but I want to have that conversation. I don't want it to be a dialogue, not an override. We approved this tonight because we don't have any other choice. They did have an opportunity to weigh in during the budget process, I suppose. I just feel a little guilty because it's a bit of an override. It's not a dialogue.
So
I received confirmation from my staff that the committee is aware of this program being funded out of this fund.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I was going to make another statement that I know for the past at least 2 or 3 years, the committee has actually been reviewing the financial expenditures out of that open space fund on an annual basis. I know they did that when I was on the committee, and I saw it on the work plan this year, so I assume it's still taking place. So I feel confident we can move forward.
Okay, good. Would someone like to make a motion?
I have it in front of me. Hold on. Pulling it up. Make a motion. Nope, I don't have it. Somebody have it in front of them. Sorry. Pulled up too.
I'll make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution number R-27, Series 2020. Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Boulder County 2020 Youth Corp Program Services.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lacey, second by Trustee Ryan. And roll call vote, please.
Folsom,
Yes.
Emmerly,
No.
Lasis,
Yes.
Lish,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Skwazinski,
Yes.
Okay, I think that's everyone. Thanks. Motion passes. And we're on to the next item, which is 3G, approval of the raised pedestrian crosswalk on North Torreys Peak Drive. Recommendation for this traffic calming measure. Okay, approval of the crosswalk. Mark.
Yeah, so I pulled this. I read the packet. It seemed like there was consensus from those who participated in the survey, kind of reading through the survey results, that it seemed like most of the residents in and around this area supported the raised crosswalk. We're not necessarily supportive of the median entranceways and additional traffic calming measures that could be potentially located closer to Rock Creek Circle. Elsewhere on Torreys Peak. I would love to hear just from the TSC in terms of summarizing the process that you guys went through and your recommendation here. My understanding is we were looking at potentially $100,000. This is a $35,000 estimate for the raised pedestrian crosswalk, not for the other speed humps or the entrance median. So I'd love to hear the TSC's input.
Yeah, so Alex Keepus is the longstanding member. Alex, keep us honest on this one. We didn't actually have a second TSC meeting, as I recall. We were scheduled in February, and that meeting was, I don't think it was canceled because of COVID, but I think it was postponed, correct?
It was postponed, and then the regular meeting would have been April 6th, I believe, and that's when all public committee meetings were canceled as well. So we didn't have an opportunity to go back to the TSC. We've been working with this neighborhood since September. I figured the TSC could weigh in on it tonight, but we felt that we've gone through the neighborhood outreach process. Here's the results. And we'd like to move forward with it. If you want to wait for another meeting of TSC, the next one would be in, I think, June.
So Mark, so Mark's question is good. So Mark, kind of directionally, the way the process works, there's a bit of a, there's a gate, there's two gates really with the TSC. There's a gate that sort of starts the process. And then there's the you know, think about the flow diagram, and then there's community work sessions. And then it comes back to the TSC for recommendations. If it's not material, you know, if it's a stop sign, then the TSC may make that decision. Something like this, which is of course material, the TSC would make a recommendation and then the board would act. In this case, the TSC as an entity has not made a recommendation due to calendars.
Do you guys have one now?
I think speaking as an individual on the TSC, I am fully in support of it. You know, so I sat in on a number of the neighborhood meetings that, you know, that Alex and his staff had together, whether it was on Rock Creek Circle, Pitkin, there's some other ones. I did not get the chance to sit in on the Torrey's Peak neighborhood meeting, but looking at the results, I think it's very, you know, very respective of, you know, sort of where you thought it would come out. You know, given our own guidelines, given the length of the road, you know, a raised crosswalk here makes a tremendous amount of sense. The two that are on El Dorado Drive, I use them all the time, and they make a tremendous difference in terms of slowing things down. I know in Torrey's Peak, there's a lot of kids that use that crosswalk. Raising it will, you know, force it's that friction that I talked about earlier with the roadway. I got that from one of Alex's consultants, Bill Fox, but I think it works. It's the friction really helps to get people to slow down, and you know, it'll keep you know, kids, you know, focused on, you know, making it cross the street safely.
Yeah, I'll go next. I'll support what Neil says. I mean, directionally, we have all kinds of tools in our bag for potential traffic calming initiatives. If we had unlimited money, we would redesign all the streets, we'd rip them up, and you'd fix them, not unlike what we have in downtown Superior, so people don't go super fast. That's not an option. And so there's only so many traffic calming initiatives you could pursue. And the raised crosswalk is by far my favorite. I think it is as effective as, or maybe even more effective than a speed bump. Aesthetically, I think it's a lot more appealing. And I don't have data to support this, but anecdotally, it's a little bit easier on the chassis for your vehicle. I agree. The ones on El Dorado are great. So my support.
And I fully support this as well.
Okay, great. Thanks. I appreciate that. I'll just say for full disclosure, I live 2 houses away from where this is going to go. So I know this crosswalk very well. And I support putting in a raised crosswalk there. I think it's, again, we're dealing with another street that it's hilly, it's pitched, and people use it as a, you know, cut through to get over to El Dorado K8 and to get back from El Dorado K8. And as a result, people travel too fast for the road. So I think it's definitely needed.
So staff is looking for direction. I think it's a fairly low expenditure. We haven't really gotten into design, but we'd like to move forward with that. So we're looking for a motion to authorize the town manager to approve up to $35,000 to implement this raised crossing.
Okay, someone like to make a motion?
I would like to ask if there's any public comment on this item.
Okay, good point. Any public comment? I'm looking at the attendees tab and not seeing any. Yes, there is one. Okay. Shire, that's the name. Only got one name there. Go ahead. Go ahead, you're live. Schreier, go ahead. You're live. No, you're not.
She's muted.
Unmute. Unmute. Schreier, you're up. Go ahead and unmute.
Judy, you're still on mute.
There we
you
go. Go ahead and speak.
You may need to enable your audio.
Does Martin have to, does someone have to let her in?
It's on.
Yeah.
Is there a chat feature in this technology? Can he or she type her
We
question?
lost her.
Good job, Mark. Thank you. Scared her.
Okay, we can give a moment.
Yeah, I was just going to say for a little bit of context, if that is indeed Judy Schreier, she's written into the board before requesting, or to the TSC before requesting this crossing, so she certainly has a vested interest in it.
I think she also organized the survey necessary to get this on the TSC's agenda, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thanks for that input. I'm not seeing her or anyone else coming back on the participants' side for public comment. Okay, with that, would someone like to make a motion to move this forward?
I'll make a motion to approve we don't have a resolution with this, right? It's just an expenditure request.
Direction of staff.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to direct staff that they can spend, I believe it's $35,000, not to exceed $35,000 in expenditures to explore the raised pedestrian crossing on North Torres Peak Drive, with the work to be undertaken by the town's on-call contractors.
Okay, motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis.
Second.
Second by Trustee Ryan. And roll call vote, please, Phyllis.
Lasis,
Yes.
Emmerly,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Lish,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Skwazinski.
Yes.
We're a little out of order now, but I see that Brett Schreier has rejoined. Maybe take a step back real quick just to hear the public comment.
Okay, I did get a message from Martin saying they chose not to speak and remuted themselves when he opened the mic, but
okay.
Okay.
Offer an opportunity for public comment. Brett Schreier, would you like to speak? Brett Schreier, would you like to speak? You can speak now.
The hand is raised, but unfortunately we still can't hear them.
Highly possible it could just be microphone enabling problems on the computer.
Okay. Well, the motion's passed anyway, so. All right, that concludes our regular agenda items. We're on to reports, issues, and questions at this point. Who would like to start on our reports?
I'll start. I have nothing to report.
Okay, I think I just heard something from Brett Schreier. Would you like to try that again? You're in our meeting. Go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I apologize. I've just, the Zoom crashed on me.
Everything's
No,
there you are.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I apologize. It crashed earlier, so I'm just having Zoom troubles. But I just want to thank you. We're in supportive of the raised crosswalk at that crossing. So just glad that this process is going smoothly. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate that. All right. Sandy, you had nothing, and who would like to go next? Neil, go ahead.
Thanks. I don't have a lot. ProStack is meeting this week, and one of the things on the agenda is to continue to talk about 88th Street and pedestrian and bike access. I know Alex and his team have a great path established, but I think the ask from Kevin some time ago was to ProStack and some of the other committee meetings to look at the construction projects and weigh in on ensuring that bikes and pedestrians are addressed. So they're going to look at that this week. And the only other thing I want to bring up is that I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to staff for putting together the town grant program. As we're all more than aware, getting cash to the businesses that need it is most important. And on that metric alone, you guys have demonstrated a real impact to the businesses and getting them cash quickly. So, hats off to putting a program together quickly and getting the cash out quickly. I think looking at other communities and what they're trying to do and what we've done, I think it's fantastic. That's it.
Okay, very good. Ken, you're next.
Yep, I'll echo exactly what Neil just said. I have had a chance to talk with multiple of our small business owners here in Superior who were able to take part in the program, and between just the hardships that they're experiencing right now and the difficulties with actually accessing funds from the federal stimulus programs, I've heard from multiple people that we are the only effective and efficient government stimulus program that they've participated in, and that our funds truly made a world of difference in them being able to keep their doors open, both in the interim and possibly in the long term. So just well done, staff. You guys did a phenomenal job actually getting the dollars out the door. Just great work. I will continue down that same line. We're starting to see flattening of the curves, both nationally and in various regions in our area. And I think it's important that we all continue to work towards the social distancing protocols that are in place right now to ensure we don't have any additional spikes. So I encourage all residents to continue to social distance themselves appropriately and to wear masks when appropriate. And then one question I did have for town staff, and I should have brought it up, I think it's maybe a week or two ago when it came through in our emails, there was a recommendation to either cancel or reschedule our retreat that was scheduled for next week. I don't know if we ever got that finalized. I don't know if I just missed additional emails that went through, so I'd like to hear a status update on that. And if we aren't going to have it next week, I'd like to see it rescheduled promptly, because as of right now, all of us are stuck in our homes, so we don't have the travel conflict that we struggled with all of last year, and I don't want us to get back into that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Who'd like to go next? Kevin, you're unmuted. How about you?
Sure, I'll go. A couple things.
Then Laura.
Great. Number one, yeah, Matt, just fantastic job for you and the staff with that grant program. Really impressive. I had to pay attention for a different reason to the Broomfield meeting, and they were a week and a half, 2 weeks behind the town of Superior, given the size of Broomfield. The amount of staff that they had, pretty impressive. We were able to pull that off with the very few staff members that we have. So fantastic. I am, related to COVID-19, I am beginning to worry about our budgets. I recognize that we have, some stores like Costco that may have done pretty well. But that's based on instinct, not based on data. You can imagine other communities like Broomfield that have more of a retail presence are very concerned around their tax receipts and are making some important decisions around capital improvement. I don't think it would be premature for us to make too many decisions, but when we do need to make those decisions, Matt, I think it's, we talked about this a few weeks ago, the idea of kind of some quarterly check-ins or periodic check-ins with all this group or a subset of this group. It's never been more important. I think we really need that increased visibility into our finances to help us understand whether or not we need to pivot around some of the capital improvements that we're making, because we don't know how long we're going to be in this situation. So Matt, if you could just consider that in the coming weeks, and to Ken's point around the retreat, I still have it on my calendar. I suspect a lot of us do. I have no problem with having a retreat next week. And if you wanted to use part of that retreat as kind of a financial overview, if you guys had the time to compare something, or at least give us a snapshot. And third, I want to make a comment around this part of the agenda. Traditionally, this part of the agenda is for announcements, and I've given examples around how useful I find this part of the agenda to be, because we all can't be at our committee meetings. We all can't be, you know, Clint goes to a ton of regional meetings that I wouldn't have visibility into unless Clint was making the report out. And so I think it's very important. We, in this new forum, in the last meeting, we started to bleed over into a report out, public comments, into a dialogue. And so as a matter of practice, and I feel like I've sort of cheated that a couple of times previously, saying I'm looking for directional head nod that the TSC is going to spend $2,000, and people say, oh yeah, that seems reasonable type of thing. I think I've maybe let that genie out of the bottle. I'm going to put it back in. No matter what comment is made in this part of the agenda meeting, I'm going to be on mute when other people are talking, and will not engage as a matter of practice during this part of the comment. So if the next person that talks says, I want to get everybody's impression around changing the 4th of July parade to the 5th of July parade, I will be on mute and will not respond from this point forward as a matter of practice, regardless of the topic. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Appreciate that. All right, Laura, go ahead.
So I think Kevin's points are very fair, and now I just may need to tweak a little bit about what I was going to say. So I hosted First Friday virtually on April 3rd, along with Mark and Kevin. The virtual format was really great, and I want to give huge kudos to Martin, Kevin Colon, Emily, and the rest of town staff for making this work. We did have a question during the session on whether it was being recorded, which it wasn't. I would like to suggest that we consider recording the May session, just as we record all our town meetings. In the past, to my knowledge, the only reason we haven't recorded First Fridays is because it's held off-site and it's not easy to record. But now that we're using Zoom, I think there's no reason for us not to press the record this meeting function. That would give full transparency to our residents. So Kevin, in the spirit of what you just said, I'm not going to ask for reactions at this time, but I'd like to propose that we discuss that at our next retreat, whether that's next week or whenever else it may be. Earlier, when we were talking about our event equipment contract, I raised the topic of how COVID-19 may affect our annual events this year. As I've mentioned in the past few meetings and also via email, I still feel really strongly that we should schedule a robust board discussion about our response to COVID. I'm thrilled that town staff was able to so quickly mobilize to issue the small business grant, but I think there are still a lot more ways that we could be proactive and take actions that the state and federal governments have not yet taken. Mayor Pro Tem Lasis had suggested to me that I propose specific policies for consideration. While I was initially advocating for playground closure and a shelter in place in Superior, the state has now made those happen. But a few additional examples of actions we might consider at this point would be requiring masks in all Superior businesses, hosting a town hall to help educate people on why social distancing is important, or making sidewalks and trails in town one way to limit passing. So for example, you might walk only in the opposite direction as traffic, otherwise you cross the road to get to the correct side. These are just a couple ideas that I think would be helpful that I've seen other towns implement, but I definitely don't think that I have all the answers. I think if we could put our heads together as a board, we'd be able to collaboratively think of other options as well. So I'd like to just once again publicly propose that we have a broad discussion on our town's response to COVID, and maybe during our retreat next week. Again, to Kevin's point, won't ask for a reaction now, but as we get into the retreat, I feel very strongly that this should be something that we talk about at length.
Okay, thanks, Laura. Do we have a retreat on the calendar for next week?
It is on the calendar. I had suggested in one of my digests, I think it was, or COVID updates that I didn't know if the board would prefer to meet in person at the retreat, but if you're all okay with the Zoom application and continue with the retreat next Monday, we can get a list of topics out and start putting together some information.
Okay. Yeah, I recall it being on the kind of standing date on the calendar, but I think I had removed it just based on that statement in the digest, but certainly fine re-adding that if others would like to go ahead and do that. And I think we've probably got a list of topics to discuss and be fine doing that if everyone else is and available. Calendars have probably been cleared from everything else. So.
Okay.
Okay, who'd like to go next on reports?
So I don't have anything specific to report on, mainly just an observation. And
Mark?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I don't have anything specific to report on, mainly just an observation. Reading the various Facebook community groups that we've got here in Superior Community, the Louisville, 00270, anything goes. These are obviously unprecedented times, and we're all kind of living through a new normal. But the thing that has been kind of discouraging to me is how the sense of community seems to be falling apart at times, insofar as there is a tendency to just kind of shame people, and specifically with respect to like mask wearing. And I think that as leaders in the community, that we can all do a better job as just kind of ambassadors of the collective community goodwill, to just kind of remind people that we're all neighbors, we're all trying to do our best here. It's difficult to understand exactly what we should be doing. Should we be wearing masks when we're going out to walk the dog? Or I think everybody's pretty clear on if you're going into Safeway or you're going into Costco. I went into Costco today, and I would say probably 80, maybe 90% of the people were wearing masks in Costco. But the discussion and how it kind of spirals out of control online is discouraging to me. And I think it would be beneficial for all of us to try to do our part to kind of, wade into those waters and just kind of remind people to be good to each other, and to remind people that we're all trying our best to navigate this crisis together. And I think that would just be a good use of our, pulpits here on the town board. So that's my recommendation to you all as leaders in the community, to just kind of speak up and try to keep the community together and not allow it to get so divided. And that's it. I hope everybody still stays healthy and feels well.
Thanks, Mark. That was good suggestion and comments there. Who's up next?
I think you
Neil, have you gone?
Yeah, it's your turn.
It's all you, Clint.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Definitely unprecedented times that we're in here. And, I've been keeping busy on, on a day-to-day basis with a lot of different Zoom calls and conference calls with mayors from around the region. Representative Neguse holds a conference call every weekend, and also been on calls with both U.S. senators and even White House staff. So definitely lots of information to digest, and as it's relevant, I've been trying to forward that along to the board and incorporate it into the different messages that we've sent out to the community. I want to thank our town staff for doing such a great job at keeping the essential services running and being responsive to residents and their needs while balancing the many challenges that they've got in their own personal lives managing this crisis. Especially proud of our town's efforts and the board's support of the $190,000 in grant funding that we've been able to provide to 23 different businesses. We really value these businesses in our community, all the many contributions that they make, and appreciate that we can support them. Appreciate the efforts of our Chamber of Commerce and all the chamber members, that all the fantastic work that they are doing to support these businesses, their food program to support healthcare workers, and just so many great examples of people being great in the community. To that end, my wife Leslie would like to introduce a First Lady campaign and encourage people to send us video clips of what they are doing, or what individuals are doing, or what families are doing to kind of be Superior Strong, whether you're helping a senior neighbor, your your healthcare worker, you're howling at 8 p.m., just whatever you're doing to be Superior Strong. We'd love to hear about that and kind of share that on the mayor's Facebook page. So I encourage you to produce those and send those in. So thanks again for everyone, everything that everyone is doing. So appreciate all the efforts. And with that, I am done. Turn it over to Town Manager Matt Magley.
Thank you. So for the retreat, we'll have it scheduled for Monday, April 20th, starting at 6 p.m. I'll send out a list of topics that I have running on my reminder list tonight before I leave. And if you have anything to add or comments, just send me a reply and I'll incorporate those. And then we'll work on getting the agenda out by Friday. I want to thank the board for your support in the Superior Emergency Small Business Grant application. I would agree that from what we hear from our local businesses, it's had a great impact, and it's helping them. It's one of the things I love about local government is we're able to move more quickly than the state or federal and government and make a true impact to our residents and businesses. I want to thank also my staff and our consultants for getting that set up so quick and implemented so quick and getting the funds out so quick. So it's hopefully it's making an impact and helping them get through this tough time. It was timely as far as the first quarter financial reviews. I got that scheduled for April 27th. I'm not sure our finance staff will be able to get something together for the retreat. If we can, maybe that would be a good time to do it. So if not, we'll definitely have it for the April 27th meeting for you guys to take a look at and review and discuss with myself and Paul as far as where we stand currently. As I said in my digest, the impact that we'll see from this whole situation will probably be with our main April and May receipts, which we'll get in June and July, I think. So we'll have a better idea at that time, but at least we can give you an understanding of where we think we're going to be at in a couple months. And then as far as the coronavirus, staff continues to message to our community through social media, e-blasts, and patrols throughout town on a daily basis that our rec and park and recreation facilities remain closed, and to encourage social distancing. We're also going to continue to put out information about having your dogs on leash, because I know that's a recent flare-up concern with residents, with everybody being outside trying to get some exercise, being tired of being inside all the time. So we'll continue to monitor all of our facilities and try to educate and remind the public that it's best to stay out of those facilities and keep your distance until we get past this whole thing.
Hey, Matt, can I ask for clarification? Are ball fields closed as well?
All of our recreation facilities is what we've been saying. Anything that would encourage people to gather in groups. Now, it's tough to enforce because we have some pretty large parks, and if somebody wants to get out there with, you know, their brother or sister or mom or dad and throw the ball around or something, you know, we're not gonna be too concerned about that. It's, you know, when you start getting to 10 or more people, which is, you know, the minimum standard, that we'll start to get out. You know, the bike park is another one, the dog park, facilities like that, that playgrounds that will continue to remind people that they're closed, and this is why.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Matt, another question and actually an observation as well. I've been doing a lot of biking around town as well, and I don't know if there was a sign or if it's just been removed, but on the east side of the skate park that can be entered through from the Bell Flatirons Apartments, I didn't see any signage that said the skate park was closed. I did see people using it, so I don't know if there's a place where we can add another sign there, or if it's just
yeah. The skate park, the day we put up the signs, they went missing. So that's we'll continue to put those out. Yeah.
Okay. And then the question I had was the economic grant program for businesses. Is it closed now, or if there are other businesses that have not yet applied that are eligible, can their applications still be processed?
It remains open. So we received an application today. So yeah, if you, there's a few businesses in town that we've contacted and haven't received any application from. So if you know of one that you think qualifies or would meet the requirements, I would encourage them to submit an application.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
That was it for me.
Okay, thanks for the updates, Matt. Appreciate that. Kendra, anything from you?
Nothing for me.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. And any updates from Phyllis?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. No, I don't have any updates.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, thanks everyone. We did pretty good on the time here tonight, 9:15. Not bad. All right, anything further before we adjourn? I missed my gavel. I need to go get my gavel from Town Hall. That's what's missing. I knew
it's just behind you.
Missing Town Hall, so I created this new Zoom background for because I was missing Town Hall. But I'm gonna go get my gavel. What was that, Mark?
I said it's just right behind you. Just reach over on the dais.
Oh yeah, that's right. I wish. Okay, all right. With that, I'll bang my phone. We're adjourned. So good night, everyone.
All right.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Stay healthy.